It is Thursday, the 19th of April, 2018, and you're listening to Skeptics with a K, the podcast for science, reason, and critical thinking. Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society, a non-profit organisation for the promotion of scientific skepticism on Merseyside, around the UK, and internationally. I am your host, Mike Hall. With me today is Marsh.
Hello.
And Alice.
Hello.
And our special guests, Emma.
Hello.
And Laurie.
Hello.
A 5-person show.
This is unprecedented.
Which is quite... I mean, I don't know what skeptical podcast would try and have 5 people. It's 5 different voices speaking on a regular... It's an absurd thing to do. A genuinely absurd thing to do. Okay, so I've deleted my Facebook.
You deleted your Facebook?
Deleted my Facebook completely.
I haven't noticed you're gone.
You know, fuck that.
He did announce it several times before he did.
I did.
I didn't pay attention.
I was quite vocal about it as well. Mostly kind of triggered by the Cambridge Analytica stuff, even though how much impact that has still remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's because I do not trust Facebook with data about me at all. Nothing. I do not trust them in the slightest. Like Apple, I trust with data about me. Google, I mostly trust with data about me. There are some things there that make me a little bit suspicious, but Facebook, not at all. Not in the slightest. Not even a tiny bit.
How much data do you actually share with Facebook, though?
Relatively minimal, although it did know things like, you know, who my family members were and what my likes and interests were, all the TV shows that I liked. And
Did you do that complete download thing of all
I
of the
did
data?
download all of the data. There was nothing untoward. You know, people are downloading that data and finding like every phone call they've ever made and stuff like that. But there was nothing particularly untoward in the download of my data.
I mean, you shouldn't trust Facebook with any of your data, or Google, or Apple, or any of them, but for reasons that you don't know yet, but we'll tell you later.
Okay.
It does involve a spider.
It does involve a spider. It does definitely involve a spider. Yeah.
And the interesting thing about what Facebook have done is they can build shadow profiles of you. So
not phantom lives, not phantom profiles.
Like the hole that you leave in your circle of friends, they can intimate things about you from that. As well as they have every like button on every website.
Yeah, so they can follow you through the web.
Even if you're not a Facebook member, they can see, okay, this individual has gone from this page to this page to this page to this page, and track you across the web like that, and start to build up a reasonable picture of who you are.
You sound like a conspiracy theorist, Mike. I mean, a very specific conspiracy theorist.
Well, what I am is a technology person who knows how these fucking systems work. Fuck Facebook, and I would encourage everyone to do the same. I don't often go out on a limb and say we should all do this, but fuck Facebook.
No, that's a very good point. Fuck Facebook. Everyone should do the same. Also, QED tickets are going to be on sale soon. You can find out more about that at Facebook.com/QEDcon.
You can find information about that, and also on our website, which doesn't have any trackers.
Doesn't have any trackers.
Because fuck that. That's more or less all that I've been up to. I've been up to my eyes with work, and I've been deleting Facebook. That's the sum total of what my life has been over the last 2 weeks. What about you lot? Because there's a reason you're all here. It's not just we thought we'd have a skeptical party.
They've all been painting my house.
We have been in painting
That
Emma's new house. Emma has a house now. Is a homeowner.
Yes, I am.
Exciting stuff.
Which was an arduous process in order to obtain a house.
Oh, God.
Not half as arduous as the guy selling it.
Well, because
I don't think we can talk about that.
Let's not go into that. No, but the person who was buying the house that my partner Andrew was selling, she didn't want... It took a very long time to process. One of the reasons being that she changed her solicitors halfway through because she didn't want her data stored in the cloud. Which is another thing that we're going to throw forward.
You can't trust clouds.
She was very right.
She was absolutely right. You can't trust having any data in the cloud.
At all.
Because what you don't want is all of our data or your mind conglomerated with other minds. That's a bad thing.
The thing about the cloud is that it just means someone else's computer. That's what the cloud means.
Yeah,
is someone else's.
It is
computer.
in this particular context. I don't think that's what it means in the
almost
the future
certainly
context.
not. But we should stop throwing forward because we're just going to confuse people. I did see in Tesco quite recently they're advertising external hard disks as personal clouds.
Right.
It's just a hard disk.
Yeah, that is nice.
You can't call it a personal cloud.
Finally, after nearly 8 or 9 months, we've finally purchased a house, and everyone apart from you spent most of their weekend painting said house.
Well, we only spent a part of our weekend because we would have spent longer, but we had to spend a long time doing something else. And
4 hours doing something else.
Yeah, at least 4 hours. Yeah, exactly. Plenty of time. So let's get to the long and short of it. We went to see David Icke in Liverpool. Asterisk. Because when did we see this? Because we saw
Saturday the 4th.
No, but
when
we
did
saw
see
this
it
advertised
months ago?
Months and months and months ago, and it came up, and we thought, wow, David Icke is in Liverpool, because it was announced as David Icke is coming to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And then we looked at it, and the specific place he was going to be in Liverpool was a little part of Liverpool called Southport, which is a 45-minute drive from Liverpool.
It's just not Liverpool, is it?
It's not in the slightest
straight
Liverpool.
up not Liverpool. It's barely Merseyside. It is Merseyside, but it's barely Merseyside.
It is. And then we had this conversation about whether it was worth us going, and why we would go and who would go, and we thought it'd be good for Skeptics with a K to go. And
I think the point you thought was to see Mike's face.
That was the original plan,
we
wasn't
wanted
it?
to take Mike.
That was
and
the
just
original plan.
Mike would watch David Icke.
Yeah.
We would watch
watch
Mike and just spend the entire time watching Mike watching Icke.
Because I don't do well watching people talk bullshit. I get very worked up. I get very frustrated. I don't enjoy it as an experience at all. And you have a perverse little fetish where you like putting your friends into uncomfortable situations to observe how uncomfortable they feel when they're there.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm not alone in that, because Emma
Marsh
has
is
that as
both
well.
a sadist and an intellectual masochist.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But Emma's on board with this.
Me and Marsh have a history of going to things like this because we went to Pop-Off.
We went to Pop-Off.
Yes.
So we enjoy doing it, and I can
But
manage to keep a straight face.
you enjoy
Yeah.
going because you enjoy the experience of going yourself. You don't get enjoyment from seeing other people having a painful experience of experiencing it.
Is that definitely true? You don't
I would
enjoy...
I probably would have enjoyed, say, my partner Andrew watching it.
Yeah.
He really gets into watching things he doesn't like.
Yeah.
That's his main
Well, he
hobby.
just refused
That's his main
point blank
hobby.
to go, didn't he? He
He
just
did.
refused point blank
Yeah.
to go, because we were all trying to get him to go. I couldn't go because I was working. In
Yes,
the end,
it transpires.
which is a shame.
We'd bought you a ticket, but you couldn't go.
But I couldn't go because I had to work at the last minute.
Yeah.
Oh, work.
Oh, but we
so
still thought
devastated.
it was well going. So this, listeners, is in fact what some of your Patreon money goes on. Is for us to go on undercover-esque investigations, such as going to David Icke.
We should talk about who David Icke is as well, because he's quite well known in the UK scene, less so in the United States. Where they,
I don't know if that's true. I think he's pretty well known.
I've heard some fairly high-profile atheist and skeptic podcasters refer to him as David Icke because they've got no idea who he is.
Yeah, but those podcasters also refer to themselves as Cecil when what they mean is Cecil. So you can't trust cognitive dissonance to pronounce people's names correctly.
But David Icke, he was a former professional footballer.
He was, yeah.
He was a goalkeeper for Hereford and for Coventry. He actually made his debut for Hereford against Southport. Little Icke fact.
Wow.
And then
So was it on Wikipedia?
No, he tweeted it. He tweeted it on the day when he was going to Southport.
After he retired from being a professional footballer, he became a football commentator.
I think he's more of a pundit, more of a host than a commentator.
not like narrating matches.
Yeah.
Because that's narrating matches is how it goes.
Narrating matches.
This is me revealing my in-depth football knowledge.
Legitimately an interesting Icke fact. That one of the most watched events in UK TV history was the 1989 World Championship snooker final between Dennis Taylor and Steve Davis, which went all the way through to the final frame where they had to put the black ball back on the spot because they were tied on points after hours and hours of play. And it went past midnight of them playing this last frame that was like a mammoth one. David Icke was the presenter of that very famous snooker match. And I know that because recently Colin Murray, it was the 20th anniversary, so it can't have been 1989, it must have been slightly earlier than that, but Colin Murray, the BBC presenter, went and did an interview with David Icke about that final. So he went off to Isle of Man to meet David Icke, and they only talked about the snooker, but you've got to wonder what they talked about off camera. Because, if you got the chance to interview David Icke in those surroundings, you'd take it.
In the late 80s, early 90s, David Icke appeared on the a popular talk show at the time, Wogan, presented by Terry Wogan, where he declared himself to be the son of God, while wearing a shell suit. And he subsequently kind of walked back on the son of God bit a little bit, but is now the proponent of basically every conspiracy theory that you can think of. He thinks that lizards run the world, and by lizards he means Jews, but actually he does mean lizards.
By Jews he means lizards.
He actually does mean lizards. I don't know if he just thinks all lizards are Jews, or because a lot of his fans think when he says lizards, he means Jews.
Yeah.
I think he actually means lizards. But who knows?
We'll come to that.
Yeah.
It's
complicated.
Come to that.
We could come to that. So that's kind of a very brief introduction to David Icke. He's former professional footballer, now massive conspiracy theorist, who has somehow managed to obtain himself quite a global following and a platform, possibly based on his former fame as being a professional footballer.
Nothing to do with that. I think he got his platform basically from being on Wogan saying, "I am God," and then Wogan very famously saying, when the audience laughed and David Icke smiling, Wogan saying, "David, you've got to recognise they're not laughing with you.
They're not laughing with you.
They're laughing at you."
With very famous line from Terry
which is a
Wogan
clip
there.
that he showed during his Southport
Did he really?
thing. Yeah.
Okay, so that's David Icke. So he did a live show coming to Liverpool, and by Liverpool he means Southport.
Yeah.
Yes.
He did have a warm-up from his son.
He did have a warm-up from his son.
He has a son, Gareth Icke, who is a musician.
Okay. Is that what the guitar? Because you guys sent me pictures.
Yeah.
While you sit down, there was a guitar on the stage. I thought, is he going to sing about lizards?
Well, first, it's worth pointing out that the venue.
Yes.
He wouldn't tell us the venue because apparently hate groups were trying to get the venue cancelled.
I mean, we were just trying to buy tickets.
Because normally getting an event like that cancelled is normally our MO, but it never crossed our minds. So I was thinking, what hate groups are there in Liverpool that we don't know about? that are trying to cancel. Look, we should know these people. How dare they encroach upon our territory and tactics?
Well, part of that must be about him being refused entry to some venues in the area.
Yeah.
So he did start by talking about all the venues he tried to book his event at, including St George's Hall, and he also took issue with Liverpool Council and a hall on the Wirral that wouldn't allow him to.
I had no contact with him
mentioned
whatsoever.
you by name, like took issue with you.
Which he said had absolute bloody contempt for freedom of speech, which was why he was in this Southport venue, which he'd been in before.
Yeah, so specifically the Southport venue, we weren't allowed to know what venue he was in Southport up until the morning of the event, is what they said. And it actually was the night before that they released it. And then when it came out, we were shocked to find that it was the only venue in Southport. It's like, it's the one on the promenade, the theatre and convention centre, the one that Sally Morgan plays, the one that everyone plays in Southport, because it's the only venue in Southport. So we were absolutely shocked to find it was a venue. But it's worth pointing out, I suppose, how many people do you think went, Mike?
Oh, to the David Icke talk. Okay, what was it about a QED?
About a QED. So you're thinking about 600 people?
Yeah, about one QED.
Would we say double it?
At
least.
Really?
The venue was 1,600, and it was almost full.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he's doing all right for himself.
It's an astonishingly sized room. Like the room is massive, 1,611 people capacity.
Okay, and how many were there for the Bants?
Well, he got a standing ovation.
He did get a standing ovation.
Did you join in?
We did not join in.
We didn't instigate it.
No, which is why
It was not an ironic one.
They're not ovating with you, David. They're ovating at you.
I mean, it wasn't a full standing ovation.
No,
there was
enthusiastic pockets.
Yeah, there was maybe 200 people, probably less than. They actually stood up.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where he got a very prominent and unexpected round of applause, like an enthusiastic round of applause when he said something, which is like, fucking hell, that was the first time that happened. I thought, where the fuck am I?
He did also get a couple of heckles, and some of them were negative heckles, which I'm sure we'll come back to at some point. So there definitely were some people in the room who, if they were on side of him for most of it, they weren't on side with him for the whole thing.
Yes, yeah. I think that's probably fair.
So we're looking at about 2.5 QEDs in Southport.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that sounds like Andy Wilson's well up for that.
Yes, he's always wondered whether he could put an event on that size in Southport. Turns out you can, but you have to be David Icke to do it.
Yeah.
So that was that. So we went in. What struck me as well about the audience, and I don't know if you guys thought the same, is that I had an audience in mind that I thought it would be. I thought it'd be people in their maybe sort of 40s, mostly male. I thought that's the kind of the conspiracy theorist demographic that I was looking for. And it wasn't that.
Not at all. It was everyone.
It was everyone.
Yeah, there wasn't a distinct, identifiable demographic. It was
that broad.
All ages. I mean, it was almost exclusively white people, but otherwise,
I mean that's Southport.
Otherwise, it was people from every background, younger, older people.
Yeah. women out on a night out,
I know,
glammed up to the eyeballs.
Some women wearing some very sparkly dresses for sitting in a pitch black convention theatre because they turned all the lights off.
They did.
The room was completely pitch black for the entire time that he spoke.
Wow.
And he spoke for a long time.
Well, how long did he speak for?
Probably about 4 hours. He did 2 hours 45.
It was 4 hours minus 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what they said was that he'd speak... So his son came on and did 15 minutes of music.
Yes.
And we'll talk about it in a second. Then they said David's going to come on and do 2 hours 45 minutes.
Then there'll be a break.
Then there'll be a break of 10 minutes.
And then he'll do an hour.
And he'll do the last hour.
Just to wrap up.
What?
Yeah.
Can you go to the bar? You can get a drink?
People did.
I mean, people were going in and out the whole time because no one can sit in a dark room for nearly 3 hours without moving.
We're not listening to fucking David Icke.
Although what they did say was they said during the 10-minute break, the bar will be open again.
Yes.
Which made it sound like the bar would be shut, but the bar was not shut during the show because people kept coming back with drinks.
But during
and popping cans. I heard a lot of people popping cans.
During the 10-minute break for 1,600 people to go and get a pint.
Yeah.
With one bar and there was one like little sweet shop.
Yeah.
Christ,
Get
that's Friday night at QED, isn't it? Good Lord.
So we open, we're sat in the auditorium. First thing that we see is a Joni Mitchell song. Pulled off YouTube.
Very bizarre.
Yeah, the karaoke version.
The karaoke version
with the words coming up.
With just a castle, a random castle in the background.
Right.
With a little sort of floating moon over
all the
front of
lyrics
it.
floating through.
So there was that. And then there was a Rod Stewart song, I've Got Faith in My Heart.
Yeah.
Which,
same thing with the words.
It was I've got faith in my heart, and also I've got strength in my heart because they spelt the word strength wrong every time. Emma pointed out.
Every time it came
Every
up,
single
it was spelled
time.
wrong. Yeah.
Nice. That's probably a find and replace error. That isn't it?
Yeah.
They've tried to do a find and replace, and that's gone skew with.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I think it's more likely that it was the chorus, and they just copied and pasted the first
Copied and
chorus.
pasted.
Yeah, I think so.
That wasn't the only spelling mistake throughout it either.
Oh, really? I didn't see any others.
Throughout the song or the
4
talk,
hours,
there were lots of spelling mistakes in the talk.
I didn't spot any spelling mistakes in the talk.
lots and
I've got a
lots.
really bad eye for spelling mistakes. I can't spot typos and things. Also, I think there's a soporific quality of Icke that you get sort of hypnotised into it a bit, and I find it hard to focus on each individual thing he was saying.
Well, that was also because it was pitch black in the room.
Pitch black.
You're probably half asleep.
Yeah, completely.
So can we get to some content here?
Yes.
What the fuck's he saying? What's he saying about
He
lizards and
he
Jews?
started off with an impression of Ed Turner.
Yeah, he did. That was the thing. Well, actually, first of all, he said, I've got to start off with a clarification.
Okay.
And he said, the UK government wants me to make you aware that nobody in the entire history of the world has ever conspired with anybody else to do anything else ever.
I'm fairly sure that is not a legal requirement.
That's what he said. But he's saying, like, so the UK government, he's clearly going like, oh, they don't believe in conspiracy. So he's saying the UK government...
He has to warn us that that's what the government thinks.
The government thinks that nobody has ever conspired with another person to do anything else ever, unless it's the Russians, in which case it's all true, it's all just true. At this point, massive round of applause from the audience.
Oh, good God.
I thought, fuck me, we're in a room full of people who think like the whole Russia thing is a conspiracy and Russia's not doing anything wrong. So that set the tone in the first minute of him being on stage.
And he did open with saying that the world is mad and run by the clinically insane.
Yes, yep.
Then he went into that. Well, then he went into his thank you to St George's Hall, Liverpool Council, and this hall on the Wirral for having absolute bloody contempt for freedom of speech.
He's welcome.
And then went into this warning
well, his warning, an apology.
An apology.
A sincere heartfelt apology, which was...
heartfelt apology.
I'm sorry, for people out there who are offended, I'm sorry to anyone I haven't offended yet. I'm getting to you. Oh, Jips.
Okay.
And then he started banging on about how we live in the world of the new religion of I am offended. He said, so you get offended on Facebook. Okay, I'll write you a prescription for 2 testicles. Grow a pair. I'm so offended. This is literally what he was doing.
The whole thing
that was
littered
the
with
tone of it.
memes and him
not
doing little sarcastic voices.
With the memes. His
It
entire
just was
talk
memes.
was memes that he read out.
And then him reading them, it was absolutely terrible presentation.
Yeah, it was an argument by meme. He said, we are increasingly born to be offended. And there was a picture of a baby crying with born to be offended underneath. And we're encouraged to be offended. There was a picture with its baby with its hands on its ears saying, oh, I'm offended, or offended person hears an argument they disagree with. It was like looking at the Facebook feed of a Be Reasonable guest. It really was. He said, I've got a cure for being offended. It's foolproof. Just choose not to be. It's a choice to be offended. The feeling of offence is in the receiver, not the giver, but we're being encouraged to be offended. He quoted Gandhi about you can only be hurt if you give someone permission to hurt you. He said, "Why is it that the system is encouraging people to give that permission to people to hurt them across a range of subjects?" And he just went on and on like this. The first 5 minutes
about offence.
Yeah, he said, "I'm still offended." And offended by what? Where is the stadium in which this offence plays out? It's in the illusions of race and religion, politics, gender, culture, and labels. This is where the offence is taken, in the illusionary offence of labels. The new religion of I am offended is really the religion of I am a. I'm a man, woman, black, white, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, middle class, working class, name, age, birth, and date. I am a label. I have fallen into label consciousness, believing that labels are me. And I thought, how much of this could come straight off a fucking other alternative skeptics podcast or off a Reddit skeptics post? Yeah. This is the stuff that you hear from the new centrists in skepticism of like, oh, everyone's always so offended all the time. And it's what David Icke is saying.
Yeah.
I am not Emma. I am an infinite awareness, having a unique experience of being Emma. And I shouldn't focus on the fact I'm Emma. I should focus on the infinite awareness.
Okay.
On your infinity of awareness. And then he started banging on about identity politics, which again, hitting
and label consciousness, that we all have a fake self-identity, which is what leads to being offended, that we have we're getting narrower and narrower and narrower into the minutiae.
The minutiae. Yep.
He can't pronounce minutia.
No, it wound me up every fucking time. It's the thing that should not have annoyed me, but it annoyed me the most. He kept going on about, we're getting smaller and smaller minutiae. It's not minutiae. It's not you've just been to fucking John Lewis and bought yourself an accessory.
What, a very, very tiny neck adornment.
A neck adornment. It's a brand new one. He's just purchased a freshly minted neck. His new tie. I wanted to strangle him with his new tie every time he says my new tie. But he just kept banging on about how all these labels are getting more and more specific, and that makes us less unique. That level of specificity of applying lots of different labels makes us less unique.
No,
apparently.
That's not how that would work.
No.
That's exactly backward.
His point was, and this is what Emma was just referring to. So he later decided to say that we are a transitory experience with an infinite awareness. We are all experiences of the same consciousness. And his point was that the system, which he hadn't at that point defined what he meant by the system, but he was referring to the system.
Are we going to come to what the system
is? We
is?
will come to the system.
Okay, I'm excited for the system.
It?
Well, the program, the system, he came to what he decides is the system and what it is. He doesn't say why it exists.
Yeah, I mean, he synonymed it.
I'm excited for what the system is, so I'm looking forward to that. That's good.
But he says that the system wants us to be focused on a 5 sense level of perception, to self-identify with the experience rather than with our own infinite awareness. So that we identify as our set of experiences rather than as who we are as individual people who are all part of the same consciousness.
Right.
Is that clear, Mike?
So we're all individuals because we're all the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And when we're focused on the 5 sense level of perception, we shut out our greater self.
Okay.
Yes.
But the the whole there's 5 senses thing is not right either.
No.
I mean, that's too few senses, but we let that one slide.
That's not how that works.
The system, which definitely includes institutions such as science and academia, tells us that it's a 5 sense level of perception.
Yeah.
So, Alice, you've worked in academia.
Yeah. Apparently, those who work in academia are also priests.
Yes, because it's all religion.
They're all religion. So all of our institutions are also religion.
So did you get the training on day one where it's like, okay, well, this is how the world works. You're now part of the grand conspiracy.
We will come back to the training because he does talk about how people end up part of this system, part of the program, being trained on the program. So I think we'll come back to that in a minute.
We have to stay on the free speech and identity politics thing a little bit longer. At one point, he did say a human life is a point of attention within infinite awareness. That's what a human life is.
That doesn't mean anything.
At which point a heckler shouted, "With a mullet!" Brilliant. It was genuinely brilliant.
But those are meaningless words.
Yeah, no, they are
totally meaningless words.
Yeah.
That's full-on chopra shit.
Yeah.
We'll be coming back to that.
We'll be coming back to that.
Over and over.
But even then, he's saying meaningless stuff. But at the same time, at one point, he put up this label, LGBTQQFAGPD PBDSM, okay? And the audience laughed because he said, he said, who are you? Hello. hello, I am LGBTQQFAQPBDSM. Oh, really? Nice to meet you. I'm Bill. And he was joking. He's taking the piss out of people who identify all those letters. So I looked into where that long acronym comes from.
Yes.
That long initialism
He said it
comes from.
came from university.
It did. It specifically came from Wesleyan University in Connecticut, but specifically came from their accommodation area where they had themed accommodation. So one of them was called, there was a student housing called Open House, which was themed around gender and sexual fluidity. And this is kind of, if you're identify any of the kind of spectrum, this might be the house for you if you're interested in exploring that kind of stuff. They had another house, which is Malcolm X House, for students who wanted to live in an environment dedicated to the exploration and celebration of the cultural heritage of the African diaspora. And another of the houses in Wesleyan University was the farmhouse community, which was for students who want access to understand farms and be around farms.
Right.
So this wasn't a prescription about how we all need to identify with this long system of letters, so much as it was basically an ad for an accommodation. It was like, hey, do you want to live here? This is themed accommodation.
And it was based around sexuality, which he seemed to misunderstand completely when he then talked about adding additional letters, including letters for left-handed people.
Yes, LH.
We should add LH. People with ingrown toenails.
Yep, can't exclude those. It bloody well hurts. We should sympathise with those. ITN.
What?
Ingrown toenails.
These should be added to this list of sexual identities.
What about the people who are sexually attracted to Christmas cakes? Add
I'll
CC.
give him that one. That one could be added to the list. That is a sexual. That is potentially something that somebody sexually identifies with.
Is that the first correct thing you said?
But the thing about this Wesleyan University thing was they weren't. This wasn't saying we all have to live under this thing. When I googled this acronym, the very long acronym, there was Wesleyan University's website. There was an abbreviation website which just explains all abbreviations.
Yes.
It's like an abbreviations dictionary kind of thing. And then there were more than 20 conservative blogs explaining how this is new progressive madness that we all now live under, political correctness has gone mad. And I've got bad news for those 20 different conservative blogs and David Icke. If we all have to live under this new acronym, the house has only got 2 floors. It definitely won't accommodate us all. It's just about people living in that building. They're not saying this is what we all have to be now.
Those are an awful lot of people who seem to be offended by somebody using some letters to describe themselves.
Oh yeah, no, there were a lot of people cheering him as he's doing this, and they were clearly very offended and very upset about this series of acronyms and how we all just need to not be offended, apparently, as they were very offended in doing so.
He did, under the same self-identity section, talk quite a lot about how race is just an experience, and so he seemed very keen to make it very, very clear that he doesn't.
He is not racist.
He's not a racist, Mike.
Is he not?
He's definitely
not a racist. We'll come back to that.
In fact, he said
I've got pictures.
He said, so many people who scream racism are themselves obsessed with race.
Yeah, but they're obsessed with, like, people not being discriminated against because of race. And he also said, like, put away the labels. I am you. You are me. We are all expressions of the same one consciousness having different experiences. What is race? Same consciousness, different coloured vehicle. That's all it is. It's like, yeah, David, but some of those different coloured vehicles get to drive on the motorway and others have got to take the long way around. And that is literally the only point to this. It's, if you make a decision based on the colour of the vehicle, that's the problem.
He then moved on from his identity issue and moved on to inversions.
Yes.
He talked for a long time about what he called inversions, which included inversions that doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the mainstream media destroys information, and religion destroys spirituality.
Massive round of applause at that point.
Yes.
Although religion destroying spirituality, I might actually give them that. For whatever spirituality means, I'll give them the religion one.
And then he came back to self-identity, saying the greatest inversion is that of self-identity, where we focus on experience perception, this 5 sense perception, rather than infinite awareness.
Yeah, it's all about the infinite awareness.
So, Emma, how's destroying justice going for you? Is that going okay? Are you enjoying destroying justice?
It's going very well.
Marvellous.
This new house is massive. That I thought.
But there were things he said in there, even that those who make their fortunes from us being sick are the same people who tell us what will make us well. That's madness. It's not madness any more than those who make their money from telling you what's wrong with your car are the ones you pay to fix your car. Yeah. That's also not madness.
They're
it's
just
specialism.
the experts in that area.
It's expertise and specialism.
But we don't like experts, because he also went on and ran about algebra and how algebra has no use in life at all.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Ever used algebra.
Is that true, Laurie? Have you ever used algebra?
What even is algebra, Emma? At the end of the day, what is it?
I use algebra literally daily in my work.
No,
like,
you don't. You've never used algebra.
Daily.
You need to tell Ike.
You've never ever used algebra?
Ike probably uses algebra. He just doesn't realise that he's using algebra.
Yeah, exactly. Every time he looks at how many coins he's got and how many apples he can buy, and he tries to work out how many apples he can buy with the coins that he has. Yeah. What else we have here? Yes.
So he talked at length about inversions. He didn't really explain what he meant by inversions, just that they were bad and that they exist.
But he has this idea that if someone is telling you what the problem is and then selling you a solution, that's an absurd.
Yes. Yeah. This is an absurdity.
Which might be a reasonable critique of a capitalist-based healthcare system.
Yeah.
And does not remotely apply to the National Health Service.
No.
But the idea as well that someone will tell you the problem and sell you the solution is a bit fucking rich from David Icke, who in the lecture is telling us what is wrong with the world and how we should...
how much were tickets into?
35 quid.
35 quid a go.
Yeah.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Should we do some algebra?
The thing is, well, he said about how people with money control things from people who don't have money. And I went to Emma and said, 35 quid to get in here. So there is that.
And then this is when he came onto programming. So he showed this diagram of like a conveyor belt,
right?
Of not that kind of programming.
All right, I was taking personal offence at that point.
Well, first what he said, what we call human life is one big program that we download. You are looking at a false reality through a symbolic headset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had no obsession with VRs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Emma tried to count how many VR
I did.
headsets.
I gave up. At one point I was counting, but it was hard because it was pitch black, and I had a pen and paper, so you couldn't.
So you're trying to do a little gate tally.
Yeah, I couldn't see it, and then this is helping me to explain some of my notes because I'm just looking at my notes, and you're starting to talk about this program. I've just got all I've got written here is sausage machine download.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a direct.
His metaphors were
brilliant.
incredible because he talked about the sausage machine, and every time he mentioned a sausage machine, he mentioned downloading as if the two naturally go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Oh.
you download all your information from the sausage machine.
What?
That's not how information works, and it's not how sausages work.
Okay, what's the sausage machine?
The sausage machine is education.
Yes.
So he
obviously.
I
should have come to
I've
that
got the whole
conclusion
quote of what he
immediately.
said here. I've got the whole quote about that.
Well, hang on, because let's just...
If you got it as well.
Comes in a minute, because actually he first showed this diagram. Before he got to education, he talked about the diagram. So he had this conveyor belt,
right,
which was kind of like a snaking conveyor belt, where you were born from the womb, and then your parents... fed you information from the system that they were trying to train you to be part of the system. Not maliciously, because they were just part of the system. They were just passing on what they'd been told.
Yeah.
And then you went into school. And school and education is this sausage machine.
Yep. He said, you go through school and university and college, and what you have through all those years and your perception of the world is the system version of everything. And the system says, tell me what I've told you in your exams and you'll be an academic success. Don't tell me that and you will have problems. You then go through school, having come out of the womb, and within 3 or 4 years, you're sitting at a desk having an authority figure telling you when you have to be there, when you can eat, when you can talk, when you can go to the toilet, and then you go to work, and there's some boss telling you the same thing, and then you have a family, and I'm thinking, is he thinking of the game of life? It's like you come out of the womb, you go to university, then you have a family, you win the lottery, you spin the little wheel, it's all you get a little pink one in the back of your car, fine.
That's not unreasonable, though, to say, the system, it kind of feeds the information that we've learned.
Yeah.
It gets fed into the next generation, who then figure out a bit more and feed that into the next generation. That's called culture. That's how that works. The difference between, I suspect, what is really the case and what he is advocating is that he thinks the system is bullshit.
Yes.
Whereas actually, even if the system is bullshit, even if the structures we've got, the science that we've got is completely wrong, it works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is a reasonable description of the reality we interact with. It might be incorrect, but it is a description that works for the reality we interact with.
We only see 0.05% of reality, though, Mike.
We do, but a very, very small amount. And it's amazing
that our 5 senses as well.
Without
all the stuff. And the amazing thing as well is all the stuff we see is visible light.
Yes, unless you build a radio telescope, and then it's not. Then you can see a lot more.
But like every single thing that you can see,
experience is visible light.
Yeah, every single thing that you can see is visible.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That's not amazing. That's what the word visible means.
Yeah.
It's like you're just doing definitions, David. There was a brilliant bit. He put up a slide, and it said, basically the system is get them in, get them confused, get them out, and get some more in. And I said, AKA David Icke's business model.
he did add. So this was an image he threw up. He'd shown this conveyor belt, and then he'd shown this image of somebody walking through a maze that said "in, confused, out." But then he added a little addition to that where he said, you get them in, you give them labels, you get them confused, and then you
he
get
just
them
introduced
out.
labels randomly at that point. Yeah. And I think at this point we heard about the postage stamp.
He was obsessed with the postage stamp.
Can you explain the postage stamp, Emma?
The postage stamp.
This was everywhere.
We're all on a postage stamp.
We are all on a postage stamp.
It was first class, though, wasn't it?
It was first class. I did like that. We
are all stood on a postage stamp.
What?
Yeah,
and we can't leave the postage stamp.
we are held in the postage stamp consensus holds people in servitude.
Yeah,
because there's a tiny range of possibility.
I'm quite a bit bigger than a postage stamp.
But if you step off the postage stamp, you are mad or bad or both.
Yeah.
Okay.
The postage stamp is basically like a two-dimensional ultimate window. It's the consensus of what is acceptable. If your ideas are within this postage stamp, I guess he's used postage stamp because it's small, but he never explained that. We had to go to that leaf ourselves.
His metaphors were just bizarre.
So if your ideas exist within the postage stamp, and the postage stamp we might call correct.
Yes.
If your ideas are
reality,
correct, then you're fine. But if your ideas are outside the postage stamp, which we might refer to as not correct,
yes, we might call it that.
Then you're kind of derided for that.
Yeah, that was one of the big themes of the whole presentation. I thought, like the rest of the world is thinking inside the postage stamp.
Yes,
I'm thinking outside the postage stamp, being David Icke.
Therefore, I'm
and
smarter.
that's not fair.
Yeah.
And I've been victimised because I'm thinking outside the postage stamp.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And the thing is, once he'd mentioned the postage stamp, almost every single VR headset from here on in had a postage stamp on it, building that up.
He said humans are imprisoned by the postage stamp of perception. And then he talked about all of the things that people are imprisoned by. So they're imprisoned by education, which is a sausage machine to download at the earliest ages possible the perception of reality that suits the system that controls it.
The annoying thing is that I kind of understand what you're saying, which if you'd said that sentence to me 15 minutes ago, it would have just been nonsense.
Yeah.
Just a nonsense of words. But postage stamps and sausage machines, I mean, why not?
The postage stamp.
Why not?
The postage stamp exists because the sausage machine
downloads
programs.
Clearly.
People are also imprisoned by peer pressure because everybody else has been programmed.
Yeah.
They're imprisoned by money because freedom is choice.
Yeah.
And so I think he was kind of basically saying that for part of it, he's not in prison because he's mega rich.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We're imprisoned by survival. He says he then put on this kind of shadowy, shady system voice saying, we, the system, have things you need to survive. And you trying to acquire the things that you need to survive put you at the mercy of the system. And that we're imprisoned by conformity. And then he summarised to say, basically, we're imprisoned by perception.
Yeah. And I thought at this point, he said, we're all trapped by perception. The system is trapping us in perception. And I thought, how does he know we are? And it doesn't just seem that way to him. How does he know it's perception that's trapping him?
He said, all the people running the institutions and policing this system have all been through the same sausage machine and downloaded the same program. So that science, medicine, academia, politics, journalism, the corporate world are all on the same postage stamp, and that programmed people are unconscious people who are therefore capable of pepper bombing people.
Yes.
No, lost me now.
He kept linking back to the attack in Syria.
Yes.
And so for some reason, he's using pepper bomb for that. Not quite sure why.
I don't know where he's got
I
pepper
think
bomb.
it's peppering bombs
rather
than pepper bombs.
I assumed it was like pepper spray, as in chemical,
but a bomb
stuff. Yeah.
But he only ever... It was always pepper bombing.
Definitely pepper
bombing.
And conscious people, unprogrammed people, real human beings, wouldn't be capable of pepper bombing other human beings.
Right.
But I kind of want to come back to that.
He came back to it a lot, so we will come back to it.
And this led into, and I'll come to it later, a revelation, a personal revelation to me that suddenly made sense about all this. So this is the only take home that I got from it. So we'll come back to him, that the only people who could pepper bomb people are unconscious people.
So this is the thing. You're programmed by the system by going through the sausage machine and downloading the program, and you're then part of the system.
But the word conscious here does not mean what the word conscious means.
No,
it means woken up to the stuff that he's talking
I mean,
about.
none of these words mean what these words mean. That's a theme throughout everything he says.
I'm getting hung up on that. It says, unconscious people. It's, they don't do much. Sometimes they'll snore.
I mean, speaking of words not meaning what we think words mean, it's probably worth also pointing out that Laurie is currently holding a lot of David Icke words in his hand.
It's a hefty book.
Yeah, so
it's small font too.
This tour that he was giving is to promote his new book.
Okay.
Which is called...
Which Emma bought, and I've
borrowed.
Yeah. So it's Everything You Need to Know, But Have Never Been Told, by David Icke.
Okay. Quite a small book, actually, for that.
It is 2.5 inches thick.
It's about, was it 780 pages, I think we got to at one point?
Was it?
It's top left.
700 and...
It is
with index, 750-ish.
It's quite a biblical-looking tome.
It's enormous.
Isn't it?
Published by...
It's not that heavy.
David Icke Books.
So, Laurie, you've got some inserts that you're going to throw in at random points from this, I assume.
Yeah,
I can see post-it. I can see post-it notes.
I've only opened it about 3 or 4 times, and every page I've gone to is now covered in postage notes.
So his little summary of this introduction was, we see what is happening, but what we don't have, and the mainstream media is not giving us, is why it is happening. And it is in the why that the context unfolds and the real world, the true world, can be seen. The idea of the postage stamp is to give us some of the pieces, but never the picture, but connect the dots between these people, organisations, events and happenings, so that's what's going on. Everything changes.
And that connecting the dots is absolutely key, because that's what he does. So we're only about half an hour into his whole talk so far.
We've not gone into his nine
we're 40 minutes into this fucking podcast.
Yeah, this is going to be a long podcast, guys. Just so we're all aware, this is going to be Icke levels long, potentially. We will start moving quicker afterwards because we stopped taking detailed notes. started taking one-line zinger notes rather than anything else.
At the point your brain started dribbling out of your ears, you thought, I can't write any of this down anymore.
Emma does have a lovely note at some point in her notes.
Complete notes, yeah. So, 10:40 p.m. Emma loses her mind. I've written that down.
Have you found it again subsequently, Emma? Was it behind the chair? Was it?
It's in.
She's left it in the convention centre.
It's in infinite awareness.
There was a point where he said at this point, I think, according to mainstream science, the Earth in the universe is the equivalent to 1/1000th of a pinhead. Probably smaller than that.
Yeah, smaller than that.
We're coming to that. We've still got...
That was utterly meaningless sentence.
that was point 1. That was within point 1 of his 9-point plan.
Oh, was that in the one? That was in point 1 of the 9-point plan.
Oh, you skipped...
I thought this was pre-planned.
Before we get to the plan, we've got his definition of what who is controlling, who is the system.
I was going to say, because the next note on my handwritten, my scrawl in the dark is "A Star of David and Jews rule the world."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
talking about connecting dots. Every time there was 6 dots on the screen, he connected them.
Yeah.
So what we had at this point was when he said the world is controlled by the equivalent of a spider's web with a symbolic spider in the centre.
Okay.
And so he starts to describe, we have the spider in the centre,
yes.
And on the innermost webs we have the most exclusive secret societies. Most don't even have names, so we can't even be sure that they exist.
Yeah, I wrote that, and I thought it must be really hard to plan things with that group. How do you put that in the calendar? It's going to be an absolute nightmare. I mean, I'm surprised they get anything done.
At the next step out, we've got the secret societies that we know exist, but we don't know much about them. So these include the Freemasons, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, Opus Dei, the Inner Sanctum of the Jesuit Order, and others.
Yeah, he did say as well at this point, you come out from the spider, you enter the realm of the secret societies that we don't know about, but we know they exist. It's like, that thing we don't know about it? We know about it. Yeah. Those things we don't know about, we know about them.
Now, I've been to a Freemasons event.
Have you?
I've been to
so have I, actually.
I've been to a Freemasons event. And
somebody in my family was a Freemason.
Yeah, I used
yeah, my dad is, and my granddad.
I'm trying to remember who.
I used to date somebody whose stepdad was a Freemason. He was Grand High Poobah or whatever the fuck they are of the local chapter. So we went to this Freemasons event. Yeah. As best I can tell, all they did was rig the raffle. That was it. It was just organised nepotism. Is the entirety of what they were doing. Their nefarious plans to rule the fucking world.
That's the second ring in from this. We've got the spider. We've got the most exclusive secret societies. We've got the secret societies that we know exist, which included the Knights Templar. And then we've got the cusp organisation where the hidden meets the seen. So this is the Bilderberg Group, the Rockefellers, the Club of Rome, amalgamations of politicians, corporate people, bankers, intelligence people, military people, who then create a common policy or direction, which is feeding straight out from the spider. The spider has this plan, and it's coming out through these cusp organisations. And then you've got the world of the seen, government agencies, corporations, banks, banking systems, governments, and media.
And he got his artist friend to mock up how that all looks into one diagram, which I've got here, Mike.
Can I have a look at the diagram?
Well, I'm going to show you it close up first. So the thing is, at the very middle, you've got the spider. Okay. And you've got here, there's all the world religions around there, you see. And right in the very centre, you can't see it because of the light on that one, but that there is the Star of David right in the very, very middle of the whole diagram. Right. Which I was like, oh, of course he puts the Star of David in the middle of the diagram. Yes. Then Laurie told me to look at the wider picture. Where he'd linked up all the Bilderberg Group and the Rockefeller and the other four, it turns out, sub diagrams, and there's a massive Star of David. Right in the centre. But he's not racist. It's important to point out he's not racist. Even though everything was set up by the Rockefeller Group, if you pay attention to what he was saying, but not racist, good absolutely. Lord.
And so the plan of this system, this web, he constantly refers to it as the web or the unseen or the hidden hand, lots of different names for this system, but the aim is to create a world government, a world central bank, a world currency which is cashless and digital. Which is important.
I mean, I'm up for all that.
A world army, a microchipped AI population.
Okay, a world army seems to be redundant.
So a world army. This is in order to protect and support the world government. And then under that we have unions, of which the European Union is the most advanced, apparently. And then nation states split into regions which allow the system to destroy unity of response. And he said the end game is not the end of humanity, it's the end of humanity as we know it by connecting the human brains through artificial intelligence, which then becomes the human mind.
Which is very, very bad because we don't want our brains all connected.
Infinite awareness.
We don't want them all connected to everyone.
We don't want a single consciousness.
No, because
we already are a single
consciousness. Yeah, that's the bad thing. That's the bad thing.
Yes.
And then, so this is where he introduces his multi-step plan, where he has 9 points, which are all labelled.
Well, point 1 was control perception.
Yes.
Point 2, Emma, was
control perception.
Control perception. Yeah.
Okay.
Point 3.
Control perception.
It was control perception.
Was it control perception?
All 9 of them were control perception.
Right. Every single one of them.
They did,
and then he started to reveal.
Yeah, they later got subtitles.
Brackets.
Because I saw that to begin with. He put the big plan up. All 9 stages was control perception. I said, it must be really hard to tell which part of the plan you're on at the moment. Oh man, I forgot exactly where I am.
So point 1 was reality. This was when he started talking about mainstream science, which says that we have dark matter and dark energy. So I've got contention with that. I don't agree with there being dark matter or dark energy. I call it hidden.
Yeah. Very specifically, I'm going to just change a word.
But weirdly, he called dark matter hidden, and he called dark energy brackets hidden, close brackets.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that was intentional or what that actually meant. But hidden, I assume he's calling it hidden because that implies it has been hidden by someone or something.
Perhaps, yeah.
I assume he's calling it hidden because he doesn't know what it fucking is.
Well, there is that as well.
To be fair, we don't really know what it is.
Well, so my understanding of what it is, and I'm sure Laurie will jump in and go, Mike, you fucking fool, and give me a smack across the face when I get it wrong.
Why don't you explain the physics? We've got a PhD physicist on the show. Why don't you explain the physics, Mike?
Exactly, yeah. So, it's my fucking show. So, the way the gravity equations work out for the way the universe works, it doesn't move in the way we expected it to, and the dark matter is matter that would make the universe move in the way that we observe it to, and it's dark because we can't physically see it, because otherwise that would just be shit we could see. It's
basically a cosmological fudge. Is what it basically
literally is, yeah. We have equations.
We use some equations.
Yeah, exactly.
We figure out the bit we can't see. We call that X.
Yeah. We can measure what we can't see. We know there's something about this much stuff.
So either the equations are wrong,
and
they've been right very, very precisely in a lot of other things, or
there's a load of matter out there that doesn't give off any visible
X exists. We just don't know what X is.
Yeah.
Because we know that all the visible stuff, that's only 0.005%. Again, he's still amazed that we can only see things that are visible. That's an astounding revelation to him.
And dark energy is something to do with the pressure causing the universe to expand. Is that right?
That's basically it. Yeah,
like it's kind of pushing the universe out faster than we think it should do from the way the maths works on it.
Well, I'm just going to jump in here with something from the book.
Okay,
go for it.
CERN.
CERN.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so what's the real purpose of CERN?
To build a big tunnel under several European countries.
I think the real purpose of CERN is to employ people who are unemployed, who needed a job, but you don't want to just give them charity, so you get them digging underground. Just like the Williamson tunnels in Liverpool.
This is a very local inside joke.
It's a very local inside joke.
Trying to get my head into Icke space.
Mm-hmm.
Was the purpose of CERN to create the World Wide Web as part of this control shit?
No, because that wasn't created by CERN. It was created by DARPA.
It was created by DARPA.
Brackets evil. But
Brackets evil.
Go on.
That's not true. The internet was created by DARPA. The World Wide Web was created by CERN. They're separate things. But okay,
DARPA,
whatever he likes. But so it wasn't the creation of the web. So what's the purpose of? Tell me, Laurie. Tell me what the purpose of CERN is.
The purpose of CERN is not to look at dark matter or new particles
Higgs
or
bosons.
Higgs boson, nothing like that.
Yeah.
No. It's to create a gateway to Satan.
Okay.
We will come back to
Wow.
Satan. We definitely will come back to
Does
Satan.
he need a gateway?
I think he's been playing Doom.
Yep. It stands. CERN stands on a site once believed to be a gateway to the underworld, and the Romans dedicated the area to the demonic god Apollyon, the destroyer.
See, this is interesting because this was not in the talk,
No,
He did talk about Satanism in the
So
talk,
we
though.
should
but
probably
not very much.
Not very much.
say
And
that the talk itself wasn't actually as batshit crazy as we were expecting.
it was David Icke light.
It was. He was playing to, as we said, the audience was quite mainstream.
yeah.
It was a very broad audience.
Yeah.
He didn't go too far off the postage stamp.
I mean, there were some things that were way off postage stamp, and we'll definitely come to those later
but
on.
We were expecting him to be way off.
He mentioned
expect
lizards
lizard
once
men-
as a joke.
Yeah, we expected lizard men. We expected things like the discovering, releasing Satan. We didn't get much of that. We did get a little bits
But
here and there.
if the people that went to the talk bought his book and read it,
Right.
they'd see a very different
So
light.
If CERN is a gateway to Satan, this talk was a gateway to crazier ideas that are in the book.
The gateway to Satan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is that so? There is
It's making an airlock.
so there's a portal to hell under Switzerland.
Yes.
Satan's airlock
Okay.
sounds like a
Well, 'cause,
euphemism for a
it's
bum.
obvious when you think about it. Has anyone seen the logo for CERN? I'll just.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
I mean, it's
particle colliders.
It's
quite
basically
clearly.
what CERN is. It's ring with lines coming off it for the various experiments, or it's 666.
Of course, he's going to say
that's
666.
always
Of course he is.
the
Overlaid
Arranged,
in different
overlaid,
Because the
different
important
directions,
thing is, if you are going to be a
It's
gateway
obvious.
to Satan, you have to put that in your logo. It's like the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah, it
You've got
is.
to put little hints to it somewhere.
Like if you say to a police officer, "Are you a police officer?"
Exactly.
They have to tell
They
you.
have
that,
to tell
that's
you
what they are.
If you are a Satanist, you have to tell them that's
Well,
the rule.
he specifically said that in the talk, wasn't it? It was the random walk. If you wanted to go from A to B, you can't go in a straight line.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's too obvious.
It's way too obvious.
So you have to have a little bit of pseudo randomness.
Yeah, the pseudo-randomness, which
That's
might...
he
skipping ahead.
hasn't-
That's point 3 of the
It is
plan.
point 3 of the
Yeah.
plan, and it has a specific name that I'm not going to jump ahead to because I
Okay.
really like the name of that.
Okay.
All right, so let's get back into the plan here.
So he was saying, like, we're in this thin band of scene stuff, and of that he said, we don't live in a world, we live in a band of frequency.
Yeah, I got that down as well, yeah. A band of frequency that we can decode.
We can decode.
And the reason that we can decode it is because you were saying you probably got this as well, Alice. That you can see 1% of electromagnetic spectrum, and you hear less than 1% of the sound. 90% of the cells in your body are not you; their atoms are almost mostly empty.
They contain 90% of cells are microbial DNA.
Yeah,
So not you.
That was it. Sorry, yes, that's right.
And then atoms are empty space, and the atoms that make up our body are not even the atoms we were born with, and therefore we're not real.
Humans have 2 fewer chromosomes than a potato.
Yep.
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, it was to wow people.
I think this was a quote he was reading,
It
and
was.
I can't remember whose quote. He had a lot of quotes in there.
And it's. I mean, all this is probably legit. All this is legit. But what he was saying is the rainbow only exists to animals with the right cones in their eye. So he then said, so that's because you are creating the rainbow. And this is where we stepped into from reality into his perception of reality, where he was saying because the rainbow only exists if you can only see that the rainbow exists if you have the right kind of cones in your eye to see it.
Yes.
What that means is you create the rainbow when certain things enter your brain, which means your brain creates reality, which means reality does not exist. It only is what is in your brain. And therefore, reality is entirely subjective.
It was basic philosophy. It was.
Yeah. I mean, he actually did the.
It was bad philosophy.
If a tree falls in the forest, it doesn't create a sound because there's no one there to hear it. Which is true for a certain definition of sound.
Yeah. I mean, what he specifically said is when a tree falls in the woods, it doesn't make a noise. It just disturbs the air in vibrations, which I put AKA a noise. That is what a noise is.
May or may not be a definition of a sound, depending on what your definition of sound is. And there's reasonable definitions of sound can be made in either direction.
Yeah. He said, we think we live in a world that is a solid world that exists outside of us. Not even that is true. That is the scale of the illusion and the hoax that's being perpetrated on us.
Well, that means it's deliberate.
Yeah, that's the thing. So because we can only perceive reality through our senses, and our senses are using electrical input.
And this physical world that we are perceiving cannot possibly be solid because of the gaps in atoms.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Because if the nucleus was the size of a peanut,
yes,
the electrons would be a baseball stadium away.
Yes.
Therefore, this isn't solid.
Yes, but he's not considering the electrostatics there.
No, he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that effect at all.
So this means that we think we live in a solid physical world that exists outside of us, but this isn't true.
Yeah, he said the world is no more out there than a VR game is out there when a headset is feeding the brain with information that it decodes into an apparent reality.
Yes.
The world exists in the brain and the whole genetic structure. And he said it's a bit like Wi-Fi. And what he said was, you can't see Wi-Fi, there's Wi-Fi in this theatre, I can't see it. He said, if you told people who didn't know anything about computers that in this room there is a field of information which anyone in the world who can access it can tap into, whether in South Africa, New York, London, wherever, and it's a collective reality that anyone can tap into and experience, they would say, you're mad, where is it, I can't see it. And he's right, but that's because that's a terrible description of Wi-Fi. That just means you're bad at explaining things. If you just say to people, oh yeah, by the way, we figured out a way of transmitting information that you don't see it because we're transmitting it in a way that's invisible, but if you have the right receptors, you can tap into that information. They go, oh, okay, right, gotcha.
Turned out when we introduced Wi-Fi, people just went, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You're mad.
Yeah, exactly. It's like everything sounds mental if you describe things in a terrible way that makes no sense.
We spent quite a long time at this point talking about computer games and how isn't it really interesting that as computer games progress, they get more and more realistic.
Yeah.
Doesn't this just show us that
we're
getting better at programming computers?
Well, he said also, I mean, the physics of computer games actually mirrors that of our reality.
They mimic that of our reality, where they're hacking into our system for decoding things that come into our senses.
I mean, yes, that's...
Yeah. It's like the reason that it's not a coincidence that the physics of computer games roughly mirrors that of reality. We're trying to do that. We are actively trying to do that. And when we don't get it right, it's annoying.
And so then he says of the system that we've set up this entire system to keep that from the population. The idea that this reality that we perceive is not true reality.
Yeah.
That is what the system is trying to prevent us from seeing, despite the fact that everybody knows that the things we perceive from the outside world, the things that we see with our eyes are things that we're taking in a signal. We're interpreting a signal. Our brains are interpreting a signal. Everybody knows that.
And he also tries to make the sound
that's what
thing.
We're trying to keep from...
Yes.
He tries to make the sound thing seem like really mystical as well. He says, what's passing between me and those hearing me is not words, but vibrational information of certain frequencies dictated by my vocal cords. People's ears pick up that waveform, and then it goes electrically to the brain, which decodes that information into the words that people hear. And he's right, but that's not magic. It's just word.
Science.
Word is the name that we give to the collection of waveforms that make up sounds.
Yes.
And the sounds are what our brain interprets. So he's just describing how sound works in a way as if it's magical and mystical.
He then, for some reason, jumped... So he's still under point one, reality, where he's been talking all about the science of how we perceive reality.
We're still on point one.
We're still on point one.
We're an hour into this show.
Yeah.
We're an hour and 20 minutes into his talk. Actually, no, we're not. We're 50 minutes in.
He jumps very suddenly to the definition of religion.
Okay.
Which he defines as a scrupulous conformity, a system of belief held to with ardour and faith, and then uses that to describe all institutions. science, politics, academia, medicine, they're religions of the postage stamp.
He does. There was a bit just before that, actually, because he was saying about he'd gone through the whole when a tree falls in the woods, etc., etc. He then used the matrix to demonstrate that nothing exists outside of perception.
Of course he did.
How do you know this is a chair? You can perceive a chair because your brain tells you so. Which made me think, if he's talking about that nothing, you can never know that anything exists outside of your perception. You can't know that. If his argument, therefore, is that no reality is real, we can never know anything. Why does he think there's an audience there listening to him? Why does he think why is he lecturing if he can't know that there's anybody in that packed auditorium to listen to him? If he can't believe there's anything is real, why is he doing any of this?
We're suddenly the man in the shack with the Emperor of the Universe and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies.
But his whole argument, therefore, was that the spider, which you'll come to define what the spider is later, essentially learned that all of reality is just electrical signals, and therefore took advantage of that to create a world that doesn't really exist. And he said, so that he literally said, what if, because our reality is just electrical signals, what if the person who wanted to control this learned that, took advantage of that, and is now feeding us information? So, but what if isn't an argument?
Yeah.
You start with a what if, and then you find evidence to prove it. You don't just go, well, because this bit over here is true, what if that means something?
Yeah.
Prove it. Yeah. How are your notes coming along, Emma?
Well, they're a bit unintelligible at this point. Point 2, hide the controllers.
Yes, I think that's where we're coming to now.
I think that's where we're up to.
Point 2 was hide the controllers. He did give an example of why we shouldn't trust science at this point. He said that scientists used to think that there was just one galaxy.
Yeah.
And now science thinks that there are 2 trillion galaxies.
Yeah.
Therefore, we should never trust science.
And also science is a religion that never changes.
Yeah, I wrote down...
Never changes its mind.
I wrote down at the time, don't trust scientists. They're an unchanging religion. Also, they keep changing their minds, so they know nothing. Also, there are trillions of galaxies out there we now know. Because of science.
Yes.
Those were literally sentences, one after the other.
That's ridiculous.
Completely conflicting each other.
But nothing exists because it's all space.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. Ghosts are real, but they're just on another frequency.
What does that mean?
It's point 2 where my notes get very much like that as well. It's just throwing random... Because that's how he was talking. It was one galaxy, 2 trillion galaxies, therefore don't trust science. Then frequency interference equals ethereal ghosts.
Yeah, but that's a conspiracy because they're hiding the fact that ghosts are just on another frequency.
Yes.
So a different frequency of reality.
Yeah,
they're on shortwave.
We have a narrow band of perceived frequency which is isolated from everything else.
Yep.
So we're trapping our attention into this 5-sense reality. Of course. And ghosts are on a different frequency. They're part of this universe that we can't see, and therefore they're kind of coming in to our perception, but we're blocking it out. We're being told by the system to block it out.
That was just a throwaway line as well, wasn't it?
It was a total throwaway line, which is why I wrote it down. But thinking that through, he's saying we've got this very 0.005% of band of frequencies that we can see, and anything outside of that is outside of our frequency, which is why we can't see it. And that's what ghosts are.
Yeah.
But that would mean ghosts would have to be visible light for those to see them. We'd have to be back into that space. So ghosts can't be that.
I think, he's saying we have to keep our perception on our 5 senses, and this is something that we're picking up.
Occasionally crosses over.
Occasionally we start to pick up something outside of our 5 senses, but the system is telling us to stay focused on our 5-sense perception, 5-sense reality. He said we're trapping our attention in this 5-sense reality.
That's true. Yeah, no, I remember that.
And then he came to what the spider was.
Well, I think he had a couple of other things as well, because at one point he threw up a wheel a picture. I don't know where that was.
That's a hell of a vision. At one point he threw up a wheel.
Well, he put up a wheel. I don't know if this is where he put this wheel diagram, because it was like a wheel like this, where you had kind of like a circle with kind of little triangular segments.
Okay, like a
well, the thing is,
piece.
Well, this is the thing. The top one was called Satanism. The one to the right of it was called Paedophilia. The one below that was called Religion and Politics. And I thought this looks like the best game of Trivial Pursuit ever. I want that special edition of Trivial Pursuit.
You're jumping a bit ahead. Actually, we're coming to the bloodlines and Satanism.
Of course we are.
We've not got to bloodlines yet. We need to know what the spider is to know what the bloodlines are.
What a sentence. Okay. We need to know what the spider is before we can get to the bloodlines and the Satanism.
You're absolutely right, Alice. What is a spider? Come on.
The spider he described as a non-human form. It's an unseen
A spider is not a human form, that's true.
So at this point he's going back to this spider web, but instead of showing a spider in the centre of the spider web, he's showing an image of silhouetted humanoid figures.
Right.
In the centre of the spider web, which he's saying are the unseen non-human form. He never referred to them as lizards, but this is what he means.
They were silhouettes and they weren't in profile, so we couldn't tell whether they were his caricature idea of what a Jew person is.
And he said that only those at the very, very top know how it works. So he's talking about the system again. He's talking about the spider, which is trying to push this system out and program people to follow the plan. And this spider is the controller. So you're trying to hide the controllers, and one of the ways they do this is to have only a few people know who's controlling our world that we exist in.
We need to dip into the book now.
Okay.
Because where's this controlling force coming from, Alice?
He never explained. He never explained in his talk.
I think he did hint that it was aliens. I think he hinted that it was aliens.
It's a non-human form. He hinted that it's an alien.
Yeah, because when he was talking about billions of stars and billions of things, he said compared to that, little green men is probably not isn't so much of a stretch. There probably are little green men out there somewhere.
But he never explicitly said it. So he said it's they're a non-human form, and he showed these humanoid silhouettes, but it was a non-human form. So it seems to be a conscious living entity of some sort that's at the centre, but he never explained where it came from.
Well, he does in the book.
He didn't explain when they came from.
It's Saturn.
What?
Okay.
They come from Saturn?
Yeah, he's obsessed with Saturn.
Is that just because it sounds a bit like Satan?
I mean, it's not a coincidence. The rings of Saturn are the generator of the frequencies, and it works in conjunction with the moon. Our moon.
Okay.
Which, if I can turn the page, whatever it is,
Saturn and the moon.
So it's not. It's not a natural thing, the moon.
Saturn does sound like if you pronounced Satan with a northern accent.
It does. I'm also thinking that he's talking about Saturn in the hide the controllers section. I'm thinking, is he talking about the Sega Saturn? Is he telling us not to play with the Sega Saturn?
We all want to hide the Sega Saturn.
Yes, he's obsessed with Saturn. It seems to be at the root of everything. So he calls it L.
Right, which is God's name in the early
okay,
bits.
That. So he calls the spider people the elite. In the same way as people say dis-ease.
Wow.
Yeah,
does he really?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to do a stretch to do that. He's got to stretch all the way back into like the original etymology of the word elite, for example.
How do you feel about that, Michael?
Well, my name did mean godlike in Hebrew, so I guess I'm from Saturn.
Yes, you're like.
It makes sense why he calls them El, because they came, as Alice said, 6,000 years ago.
Well, yeah. So he's talking about the unseen spider, the unseen non-human form that is ruling everything, and the way, in order to keep this conspiracy secret, is that only those at the very, very top know how it works, and so this is passed out through the bloodline.
Okay.
The bloodline are hybrids, part human, part unseen. So this is what he refers to them in his talk, is the unseen.
Yeah.
So hybrids are part human, part unseen. He throws up pictures of famous people, including the Queen, who we know he already thinks is a lizard.
We think is lizard. His unseens is just he didn't want to say lizard.
He's trying to kind of keep his language as mainstream as possible.
Yeah, when he says unseen, he means lizard. When he says lizard, he means Jew. So, yeah, we're level deep.
Israel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good.
And so he says that these bloodline hybrids have these character traits which make them psychopaths. They have no empathy, therefore they have no emotional consequence, therefore they have no limit.
Yes, because he mentioned the hair test for psychopaths, and I thought I'm glad he's picking up from Ronson, just as Ronson picked up from him. So that's good. John Ronson made some hay from a TV series he did on David Icke.
Yes.
Glad it wasn't a one-way transaction.
So yeah, he's saying that this bloodline are people at the very, very top who are part human, part unseen, and they are psychopaths, and that means that they can do whatever they want effectively. And this is when he introduces when this all came from.
Yeah.
So he refers to a book by an academic called Steve Taylor, who wrote a book called The Fall, where he says that before 4000 BC, so 6,000 years ago, important number,
yes.
There was no war like we know it, no patriarchal society, no class system, no inequality, no gods or organised religion.
No patriarchal society from the man who criticised somebody by saying, grow a pair of balls.
Yes. He also, when he said about the religion thing, he said there was no, in 4,000 years ago, 4,000 BC, there was no religion like it is now.
Yeah, and he said that of all of these. So
but that was a real fudge, the religion one, because there was religion, but not like it was now.
And no war like there is now. So I don't imagine they had cruise missiles.
Exactly.
But war was probably quite different.
I was interested in this.
They weren't pepper bombing.
I had a bit of a Google around. The first recorded war was 2,700 BC, and this is probably we talked about this in the car on the way home. This is probably because we didn't record things like that then.
Yeah.
We didn't have either we didn't record it or those records haven't survived. So the first recorded war that we have records of is from 2700
and also
BC.
To be a war rather than just a skirmish. Necessitates like quite a lot of people.
A fight, a rook.
We had to build up.
You go from like fight, rook, fight, scuffle, rook, skirmish.
Okay.
Into war from there, maybe battle.
This seems like the start of one of those interminable conversations that we have from time to time.
And I think I put kerfuffle.
Kerfuffle's before fight, though.
Well, yeah, at the very start.
Okay, yeah, kerfuffle right at the start. Okay, yeah, fine.
Do we go disagreement earlier than that? Is that?
Yeah. The oldest known disagreement was prior to 4,000 years ago. That's right. Yeah.
And so he starts talking about the Middle East. So at this time in the Middle East, coming out of Sumer, Babylon, and Egypt, we have the bloodlines and a new psyche. So he's talking about this new psyche, which eventually moves to Europe, and we start to have. Now I can't think of the word. Europe starts to take over different parts of the world, and starts to colonize. That's the word I was looking for, and starts to impose this new psyche on more and more people. And it's the bloodlines that are bringing the new psyche,
and the new psyche
out of the Middle East, and it's this the bloodlines are psychopaths. So that's when they came. And then he also, this is when he throws up that little pie chart where he talks about bloodlines driving Satanism and paedophilia. This is an important part of the bloodlines. They're very obsessed with Satanism and paedophilia.
Why?
Paedophilia to maintain interaction between the unseen.
Yes, that was it was ritualistic because that was it. They're part human, part unseen, aren't they? They're part human, part unseen. And to keep in touch with the unseens who are still knocking about somewhere, they've got to do these blood ritual things.
They're a death cult.
But it's not really. He didn't really explain why the unseen love it. No.
He just said it maintains interaction with the unseen.
Yeah.
That's all he said.
Yeah.
Bloodlines drive Satanism and paedophilia to maintain interaction between the unseen.
Yeah.
And they're a death cult. And then that's it. And then he moves on to point 3.
Okay.
Pseudo-randomness.
What?
Was that point 3 at the pseudo-randomness?
Yes.
Because this way he's starting to talk about World War III.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is pseudo-randomness is very important because if people start to see these connections, they start to see the journey. They start to see what the system is imposing on us.
Right.
And so politicians are manipulated into power by the web. The web.
Yes. The web.
His web, not the web.
Although I don't think that's a coincidence.
I don't either.
Because he starts talking about like the internet and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
So I think he's come up with what he's done is he's seen the destination and decided the journey from there.
He says that all politicians, all of our political parties, all of our politics is controlled by the web. We believe that we have left, centre, right, but in actual fact, everything's controlled by the web. Politicians are manipulated into power by the web. Either they know about the unseen, they know about this elite, weird system, or they don't know. They're just manipulatable, and so they manipulate them into it.
George Soros is a lizard.
Is he?
At this point, my notes started being timestamped by references to George Soros.
There were many references to George Soros.
That's the picture he put up of George Soros.
With the lizard eyes going on. He's
eyes.
He's Mr. Evil. We talked about George Soros briefly on the last episode where we decided he sounded like a nice bloke.
Yeah, well... So this is where he mentions them. Is he says that the left and right are both controlled by the web. He says that the neocons control the Republicans, and what he calls the democons control the Democrats, which are both controlled by a hidden hand.
Yes, and he had like a little puppet behind them.
But the democons is George Soros. This is where he's. He doesn't really say how George Soros is related to the democons, and he's named them the democons. So fuck knows what he's talking about.
But these days you don't need to say that George Soros is. You don't need to explain how George Soros is connected to anything. George Soros these days is a how as well as a who and a why in one name. You just say the name, everyone's no, I understand exactly how and why and everything now. Yes, yeah.
This was the first time he mentioned George Soros. What was your timestamp for that one?
8:10.
8:10. So he'd been talking for an hour.
Yes.
Okay.
That was his first mention of George Soros.
We're an hour into this 4-hour lecture.
Yes.
An hour and 15 minutes into this show.
Our notes will get much...
we're going to get much more scant towards the end.
I've done 5 pages of notes so far. I've only got 2.5 left.
So next, 9/11 was an inside job.
Yes. So he says we have to divide and rule.
Well, this is also the way we was talking about the world wars, how they want these shadow organizations would have had World War III by now if Russia hadn't been so mature about things.
Okay.
So what he said here was
Russia's
that
holding us back.
The unseen feed off regret, fear, anxiety, all negative emotions of humans. So they feed off of that.
That's really important to remember for later. The unseen, the way that they survive is by feeding off negative emotions of humans. They need regret, fear,
anxiety, regret, remorse, all sorts of negative
That's
emotions.
how they stay alive, is they feed on our emotions. They need human emotions. Low frequency, heavy emotions.
So they want to divide and rule. They want to feed off this regret and stuff, and they also know that war changes society, and so they're using war to try and move in a direction that they want. So this is the thing of pseudo randomness. They want to get to an end point, but they can't do it too obviously, so they have to create a war which changes society. He introduced at this point in the 1990s. There was a formation of the Project for the New American Century, which produced a document in September 2000, which was proposing that the American government should instigate regime change in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Iran, North Korea, Lebanon, and eventually change the regime in China. It also referred to a new Pearl Harbor being a way to change regimes in places. And then he points out that we had 9/11 a year later.
Yes.
Yep.
In 2001, and that was a way of orchestrating going to war with countries that we could then instigate this regime change that had been identified as something that we needed to do in this document from the Project for the New American Century.
And this wasn't the first time he mentioned 9/11, because he did have it in his introductory video of all the things he'd got right.
He predicted, yeah. And
he'd said at some point in the late 90s that in the early 2000s there would be a catastrophic event happen in America, or catastrophic terrorist event happen in America.
Right.
And then he said he predicted years and years before that that in 2014 in one of the US states there would be a mass shooting.
Really?
Tick.
Really?
Nailed it, mate. Nailed it.
4 a day or something?
Yeah, there's 4 a day. Yeah. They take turns at this point around the American states.
But, I mean, he's not wrong when 9/11 was used as a pretext for overseas regime change, but that doesn't mean that it was engineered to be a kind of deliberate Pearl Harbor scale event to make that happen.
We'll come to exactly why that's not correct in his thinking.
Okay.
He's got a very specific phrase that we'll come to that explains why you're wrong there, Mike.
But he talks about this and says that the aim is World War III, but World War III is currently being prevented, as Marsh said, by the maturity of Russians. It's
what I think about when I think of the way Russia behaves at the moment, is how mature he is, riding bareback on a fucking horse.
Incredibly mature. And the current demonization of Russia is to encourage support for a war with Russia. This is when we had the heckle from the lady in the back who shouted liar at the top of her voice.
Well, I think that might have been in support, though.
I think it was.
I think it was liars, as in they're being liars.
That's what I thought.
Maybe.
I thought she was agreeing, because the crowd was very pro-Russia.
Yes.
Bizarrely pro-Russia. Astonishingly pro-Russia.
I'm reasonably anti-Russia, certainly anti-Russian government at this
Putin.
moment.
Let's say Putin's actions. You're reasonable to be against Putin, I would imagine.
I really don't want a war with Russia.
No,
I do not want a war with Russia.
He talked about the strike on Russia, that it was orchestrated with no evidence, that we're part of a post-fact society, and we just decided to strike on Russia.
But even that list of countries that he said, there was a report in 2000 that had this list of countries, and if you look, a couple of those countries, they then went and did regime change in them.
Yeah, he was doing. He had a map, and then he was ticking which politicians started wars in which of those countries.
And if you look at who wrote the report, some of those people were in the Bush government when they started doing that. And so, that's probably why they did that, because they were the kind of people who thought that this needed to happen.
Yes.
And then later, under Trump's now going after bomb Syria. Look who's in his cabinet. One of the guys who wrote that report. So, this isn't a coincidence. This isn't coincidence now. That guy who thinks we should have bombed Syria, when he becomes an advisor to Trump, advises that we bomb Syria. It's not a conspiracy. It's linear progression.
Yeah.
He then says that we need. The system wants to create people's revolutions that aren't.
Yeah.
And that somebody who's particularly expert at it is our friend George Soros.
What I liked about this was, so George Soros, he criticised George Soros, the evil man, and he's evil because he's overthrowing governments.
Had a great image for George Soros.
Yeah, I showed my kid. It was there with the lizard eyes.
With the lizard eyes, yeah.
So Soros he's evil because he's overthrowing governments, and that's bad because those governments have been put in place by the shadowy hand. So Soros overthrowing those evil governments is bad because it goes against what the evil plan wants for the thing. Yeah, okay, fine, yeah.
Coherent. It's good.
But George Soros is an expert at creating people's revolutions. He founded the Open Society Foundations and has just pumped $18 billion into it.
From his own personal money. But he made that point. So where else are you going to get it from? And he founded that. So it's like man starts thing, puts some of his money into that thing. Yeah, not a conspiracy.
The Open Society Foundation mission statement is to build vibrant and tolerant democracies whose governments are accountable to their citizens.
Evil.
I mean, clearly evil on the face of it, that one. Very obviously so.
Just obvious. That we need to manipulate a target population to perceive the way that suits the hidden hand. At this point, he starts talking about his theory of how they do this. This is either through problem, reaction, solution, or no problem, reaction, solution. So either the system creates a problem and blames it on somebody else, or makes people think that there's a problem that is blamed on somebody else. The population are outraged and ask for a solution, and then they react, and then the government can justify the solution that benefits the system, that benefits the web, the unseen, the hidden hand, whatever you want to call it. And then he talks about pseudo-randomness, how if you want to get from A to B, you've got to do a totalitarian tiptoe.
Yes, the totalitarian tiptoe. That's nice. That's
a phrase that I'm excited to learn more about.
What you have to do is you have to get there as quickly as you can, but whilst also not moving too quick.
I mean, it's actually called a drunken walk. Properly.
Yeah. The pseudo-randomness.
Yeah.
Well, he made some stuff about. We know that the no problem thing, they fake stuff to make it think there's a problem.
Yes.
Because one of them, and I was chatting to them about this, whispering during the thing, they showed that the chemical attack in the Middle East has to be fake. Because here's some photos of white helmets. White helmeted people, and they're handling the corpses who've been attacked with sarin, and they weren't wearing any protection, were they, Emma?
Apart from the masks.
Yes, because sarin is gas. He missed off the gas bit. So these corpses have been killed with sarin, and yet they're touching them without any protection. So,
as long as they're not touching them with their lungs.
Yeah, sarin's a gas.
We're probably fine.
And they're outside, so the gas is dissipated. And if you look really carefully, they're wearing gas masks.
They had huge masks on
Massive huge gas masks
on their faces.
Even when he said they're doing it without protection, they were wearing protection. So that was good. And also we knew that this stuff was faked because there were pictures of this with actors.
Yes.
So here's someone being a dead body, and here he is like going, smiling, covered in fake blood. And he's right, those people were actors.
Yes.
They were photos from the set of a TV show about violence in the Middle East. So you're right, these are actors. They're nothing to do with the actual atrocity.
I think this is when we come to point 4.
Well, is this where he said, if you want to know what's happening, he literally said this, Mike, look for the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you look at where it's going to go and you see that that's where they're going, you can then see how all the steps are getting us there.
Right.
So it's literally decide where you think it's going and then backfill the proof of your point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come up with your conclusion, backfill with the evidence afterwards. That's literally what he said. But he said it like it was the most important thing.
Yeah.
Always look for the outcome and you'll see the journey.
Yeah, just before that, there was one conspiracy theory that he doesn't get involved in, which is false flag school shootings, because he believes that they're orchestrated with causing the shooters to be unwell through psychoactive substances.
Well, I don't know if that's what he meant, because he said, you look at Nicholas Cruz from Parkland, he said, well, the thing is, if you hop these kids up, there's a psychoactive substance, they're almost always on anxiety medication or depression medication, so there's always that. But then he said, there was a testimony from one of the teachers at Parkland, and she said, I turned the corner and I saw him there in helmet and gear and sort of armour and a gun I didn't recognise, and I thought, what are the police doing here? And he just left that there.
Yeah, I think it was a mix of either it's fake, orchestrated, or it's psychoactive drugs.
Yeah, he's programmed by drugs, but he left it open that this was a policeman doing the shooting.
It's all caused by something else.
Right. Point 4, centralised power.
Yes, so he did say at one point that for control, what you do is you centralize power, because obviously decentralized power can never achieve anything, and that's why the Taliban and ISIS never got anywhere in any of their actions. But yeah, you have to centralize all of the power. Everyone's working under all of that. Did you have any notes around the centralizing power
That's
there?
when he talked about Facebook and the fact that
I'm suddenly on board with this.
He thought he'd been shadow banned by Facebook.
He did think that. You're right.
Because he's maintained for a like number on his page.
The same number of followers for
He had 6,000 likes.
Yes.
Yep. 10 years ago, he had 675,000 likes, and now he still has 675,000 likes, and that's proof that Facebook is shadow banning him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not as popular as I once was.
and then also the centralised power point. That's why Brexit's a good idea, because obviously then we're coming out of the centralised power of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
But he did say they're in control of everything, and that's why they're so pissed off about Brexit, because they're in control of everything, and they didn't expect us to vote out of the EU. But they're so in control of everything that they gave us a choice. But obviously, the EU is not the Brexit thing is not really going to happen, because that's going to be a step away from the New World Order. So
I mean,
that's
I
not
can
going
hope,
to happen.
but you know.
So there was that. One of the things that he started doing at this point, and it really pissed me off, is that he'd put up newspaper stories to justify his points. So he said, here's an article from the Telegraph, here's one from the Express. But sometimes...
He didn't say for almost all of them, he didn't say who it was from. And he'd always clipped off any identifying markers on these articles as to where they'd come from. Sometimes you could recognise that they'd come from certain newspapers based on the font and how the headline and subheadings were formatted, but he clipped off all the identifying information.
You couldn't see anything apart from the headline down. And so to begin with, he'd said, here's one from the Telegraph saying such and such, and here's one from the Express saying such and such. Then he stopped saying where they were from,
right.
And that's because a lot of them were just from his website. So when he's saying, and so here's an article that proves such and such, and it's your article, mate. You wrote it. That doesn't count, you know. But there were other times that what he'd do is he'd throw up a newspaper article that was recognisably from the Mail, but he'd change the picture with one of his meme photos from his website, as if that was the picture in the story, but not told you he'd changed the picture. So it was saying something horrific on the actual picture.
Yes.
And he'd point to it as if this was proof of something.
Yes.
But it was just proof that he'd manipulated that particular slide.
Proof that he owns a copy of Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. So there was things like, one of the stories said, police are working with Amazon to access Echo and listen to you at all times. That wasn't from a newspaper, that was from his website, but it was put up amongst newspapers and things. There was a bit wasted. So at this point, my notes start getting quite scrappy, and I don't know how everyone else's notes...
My notes are done now. I'm going solely off of memory.
Solely off of memory. So I don't know where you have... what have you got next?
The next point...
I think Emma's got all the headings, so I think that'll give us some structure.
Choice. And the next thing I've got underneath that is I don't have to pay my mortgage, because that's the point you talked about, money, credit not being real.
He was talking a lot about banking.
Cashless society.
So I got some stuff on this one. So what he said about economics is that if you want to get a mortgage, you want to borrow money from a bank,
yes,
you go into a bank,
yes,
they just write £50,000 and make that up and write that on a computer screen, and they generate money that doesn't actually exist anywhere, right? And then you have to pay them that money back plus interest, which is also money that doesn't exist. So they're inventing money and then inventing money on top of that money. And if at any point you fail to pay back that money, they can take stuff off you. So they can take your house and they can take your car off you. What he's missing is you use that made-up money to buy the car and buy the house.
Yes.
So when he says this is just made-up money that has no value, it had value to you because you used it to buy a car.
To buy things of value,
so
indeed,
he doesn't understand economics, and he thinks interest is, it's just made-up, doesn't exist, and shouldn't exist. So there's that.
But the aim is to have a completely cashless society.
Which is bad.
Which is why it was quite strange that I was able to buy his book on card.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm up for a cashless society as well. I hate cash. I never carry cash if I can avoid it.
Would you get an implant?
Oh, God, yes.
You are,
you totally would, yeah.
Oh, God, yes.
He did say someone came to his talk in Sweden who'd had an implant and was like, I've had the implant. He's, what are you doing here then? You're at the wrong bloody meeting. And everyone laughed at that. Oh, how we laughed. But the thing about the cashless society as well, he said, the thing is, once you move to a cashless society, you get to go and buy something. And if your bank account doesn't have any money left in it, they'll just say, no, computer says no, you can't have anything.
That's because you've got nothing in your bank account.
But that's what's evil about a cashless society, because that's different to if you were carrying a wad of dead trees in your pocket and you'd used all those dead trees and then went to buy something.
Yeah. No, it's the same, isn't it?
Also, they're going to ban bartering.
Yeah,
Outlaw bartering.
The system doesn't want us to be able to barter. It's going to be outlawed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's really possible to outlaw bartering. Because could you do me a favour and I'll do you a favour is incredibly easy to police.
Also, I think at this point it's probably a good time to mention how much he liked 1984. He thought 1984
really
was definitely what's happening.
Is that because that's when he still had a football career?
But also he thinks that Orwell was really predicting what was happening and that we should write against
not even
this.
predicting.
Just off the top of his head, of course.
Yeah.
No, because Orwell and Huxley, when they were at Oxford, were there with people who were involved in the shadowy plans.
Yes.
So they actually knew about those things. They knew what agenda was coming, and so they
just wrote them all down and then translated them into
Sold
fiction.
them as a book.
I mean, quite remiss of the Hidden Hands to allow that book to be published, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, you'd think they would have stopped that.
A totalitarian tiptoe.
Exactly. But the thing is, I mean, he's absolutely right, because the thing we know about George Orwell was that if he had any clue that any kind of fascism was coming, he wasn't the kind of guy who just threw himself into the fray and fly out to Spain on a whim to go and fight fascism. That wasn't the kind of thing he'd do. What he would do is just write it down in a book and make money off it. That's exactly what Orwell would have done, the kind of character he was. So now my notes are just in all sorts of different weird places. He did say, look at Jeff Bezos. Look how much money he makes from stuff.
Yes.
All these Amazon's owned by Bezos. Who owns Bezos?
He made that point several times.
Yeah, but specifically on Bezos, he said, well, if we look here, we don't have to look very far. He was given money by the CIA.
Was he?
He was given this contract. The CIA paid him this amount of money to do this particular job over here. Therefore, the CIA owns him. At which point I said, by the same logic, I own David Icke. We are all in now collective ownership of David Icke as of this evening.
We've got a share at least.
We've got a share in Icke. We can share him around. You can have him Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
I went to see Ready Player One.
Why?
Pictures you there. I actually really enjoyed it.
Oh, no.
It was very good. I went in expecting a kind of with a low bar, because I thought this has kind of been a bit rubbished in the reviews. I thought this was going to be shite, but I really enjoyed it. It was stuffed to the gills with kind of pop culture references, which is the kind of thing I appreciate.
Yeah, David Icke, worst
basically
nightmare.
the point of the film.
Yeah.
It was written to be.
It's just fan service.
I love an in-joke, and it was fan service specifically tailoring to my kind of fan. There's a fucking TARDIS in that film. The main character drives around in a DeLorean.
Yeah.
The guy who scored the film was Alan Silvestri, who scored Back to the Future, and he reuses his Back to the Future cues in the DeLorean scenes. And it's, this is brilliant. But I'm fairly sure the main villain is based on Jeff Bezos.
Really?
Fairly sure that that's who it was meant to be. Probably an amalgam of a few of those kind of tech moguls, but I'm fairly sure the main villain's Jeff Bezos.
Well, he hated Jeff Bezos. He hated Mark Zuckerberg. He
didn't think Mark Zuckerberg was, in fact, in charge of Facebook.
Yeah, he couldn't have created it
because he was a baby.
Yeah, he said, can you imagine? Yeah, we're supposed to believe that these people, that Mark Zuckerberg sat around in his room one day inventing Facebook. No.
He definitely looked down. Like you say, he was interested in Mark Zuckerberg. He looked down on Mark Zuckerberg.
No, he disliked them all.
Yeah,
these were all evil people.
But I don't think he would have attributed that much evil to Mark Zuckerberg. I don't think he would have thought he was capable of it. He seemed to think very poorly of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. But Facebook is evil.
Facebook is evil, yes,
so
but he's not in charge
evil,
of it.
Google's evil. You can't trust any of these corporations. By the way, I've got 675,000 fans on Facebook, and all my videos are on YouTube, and that's how you guys all know about me. But this is not a problem at all. Let's live we shouldn't live in a cashless society. By the way, if you want to buy my book, you can use your card to do it.
Laurie did point out that he hated Apple so much that Apple was on the list twice.
It was. With the old multicoloured logo and the new sleek logo as well.
Nice.
Good Lord.
But yeah, he did say that there's no way that Mark Zuckerberg can you as if we're supposed to believe that Mark Zuckerberg invented Facebook in his bedroom, which is arguing from incredulity. It's absolute bog standard.
But also, I can fully believe, being a developer, I can fully believe that Facebook was invented in somebody's bedroom.
And see what a mess it is. Yeah.
Also, I mean, for a start, you wouldn't build the world's largest social media group on top of PHP. You just wouldn't do it. If it was any, that's a niche programming joke.
No, I mean, we're all got it. The silent was all of us just losing it silently.
Indeed, yeah. Laurie gave me a chuckle. I was happy with that. But the other remarkable thing about saying that Mark Zuckerberg is not in charge of Facebook is Mark Zuckerberg is thoroughly in charge of Facebook, to the point where he has engineered the way the stock is set up, so that even though Facebook's a publicly traded company, the people who buy shares in Facebook do not get a vote. He has ultimate control. He's the chairman, he's the chief executive, and he's the largest voting shareholder.
You're just buying what they want you to think, Mike. It's the spider. Facebook's ran by a spider.
If the whole board of Facebook got together and said, we want to fire Zuckerberg, they fucking couldn't.
Yeah.
Because he is the largest shareholder and the CEO and the chairman.
It's all the spider, though.
He's not leaving Facebook unless he resigns. He has more control over that company than most people have over most companies.
Yeah.
Was this the point where he talked about DARPA funding the internet?
Point 6, hide the real goal. I've got now.
It's again a football problem.
Yes. Yeah. So DARPA, he said DARPA invented the internet. DARPA have given money to Amazon to create the Amazon Echo. Echo and Siri and Google Home aren't different things. They're all exactly the same thing.
No, because Siri's rubbish.
No, they're all the same.
He was making the point that, and I don't remember if it was DARPA he was talking about here, or if it was another agency that he was talking about here, but he was talking about an agency that funds the generation of war, like death machines.
DARPA.
DARPA.
Yes.
He said DARPA creates death rays. DARPA,
and
who
therefore,
create death rays, also are linked to Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook and the internet and AI technology.
Yes.
And why on earth would an agency that creates death rays care about little poxy tiny little things like Facebook and Siri?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, why exactly
They
is an
must
agency
be shadowy.
Yeah, why is an agency that's creating death rays also trying to get access to listening into your home at all times? is the two and two he's putting together?
Yeah.
But he did that by just going, and DARPA, which creates death rays, is doing that. And it's like, whoa, you can't just say that. You can't just throw that out. He had Google is just a front of the US intelligence agency, nothing more than that, because Google once had a contract with the US intelligence agency on this one particular project over there, and because the US intelligence agency gave money to Google, they now own and run Google. That's how that works.
He did
I'm in charge of David Icke.
The whole way through this section, he kept saying how everybody thinks that Google are so innocent. They're just a search engine. They're just a search engine. They're just a tiny little search engine.
Yeah, no one thinks that.
Nobody thinks that.
No one
Google
thinks that.
owns the world pretty much.
Yeah.
Like they do so much different stuff.
So
nobody thinks that Google's just a search engine.
I mean, they're the largest advertising network on the planet, if nothing else.
Where they're trying to go is they're trying to Google is trying to put all of our minds into the cloud, because Kurzweil, what's he called? Is it Ray
Kurzweil?
Ray Kurzweil once said that in 2050 or 2030,
2050.
we'll be able to upload our brains to the cloud. And because Ray Kurzweil said that, that's definitely happening. That was him, I guess, showing the hand of the shadowy hand.
was a
Because
the hidden hand, yeah.
yeah, he's leaking the agenda of the hidden hand.
Leaking the plan.
But I quoted this as if it was like, gotcha, ha ha ha, I've gotcha, because I found this one interview where you said, I think we'd be able to put minds in the cloud at some point. And everyone's gone, yeah, that's bollocks, so isn't it? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But no, this was, he's accidentally leaked the real plan of the cloud. So they want us to put our minds in the cloud and connect them all up. And that's bad because, as we know, our minds are good when they're all connected all up, so we shouldn't connect them all up because our minds are naturally connected up because we're all part of one consciousness. So what we definitely shouldn't do is connect our minds up into one consciousness.
Yeah.
I guess because it's like a waste of time because they're already there. Is it like a waste of effort? Is that what he's worried about, the tautological
Efficiency.
aspect? Yeah.
That's it.
The other thing they want to do is move us out of cities and into human settlement zones.
I mean, they've just moved us into all the cities over the last 100 years. But they go, we fucked that up.
We're going to move out of cities into human settlement zones.
Right.
Otherwise
Totally
known
different.
as
Totally
cities.
Totally different things. You cannot describe a city as a human settlement zone.
No.
Totally different. Then it comes to 5G. And they are bringing in, they said here...
This is where Emma's like time-stamping all of the references. Actually, I think you'd left the room at this point.
No,
but you time-stamping references to common woo things.
So I left to go to the toilet at 9:26 where he referenced chemtrails, which was tangentially related to 5G. But then when I was in the toilet, some ladies were talking, and one of them said, "How are you finding it?" And the other one went, "It's a lot, isn't it?"
Well, it is a lot because we've got the 5G, and what they said about 5G is they're bringing that in. 5G, it's not just 4G, one up from 4G, it's another stratosphere from 4G.
Yeah.
But they've got telegraph poles in Gateshead, Marsh.
They have got, and we're going to find out all about that on Be Reasonable coming up soon. But he said specifically they're bringing in 5G into areas without testing it, and they won't test it because they know it's going to harm you. And they've already announced where it's going to be tested first, but they've already secretly been testing it for years.
Okay.
Those are 3 sentences in a row. That
Yeah.
He didn't seem to see any conflict with that, but they're not going to test it because they already know it's harmful, because here's where it's going to be tested, but they've been testing it for years.
Why do they want to do harm?
Well, this is it. This is the thing that got me, is they want to surround us in 5G that kills babies, he said, and
Yes.
scrambles our brains, because
Yes.
they need to do that because they need to use our brains in order to keep us alive, keep themselves alive. So
No.
they need to
But they
keep
want
us
to
in order.
replace our brains with AI.
Well, yeah, that's another thing that's coming. But I think we'll come to that a little bit further. Because the other thing he said was 5G. It's another stratosphere up from 4G.
Yes.
He said 5G is what the American police use in higher power to disperse crowds. That's why it's bad.
What?
Right? Because presumably some sort of like beam stuff.
But it's
that
not
they're
very
saying.
strong.
No, but they
You have
use,
to have lots of networks, lots of things.
you need lots
right
and lots
next
of them
to
together
each
to
other.
magnify it. But 5G is evil because it's what American police use in a higher power
Yes.
to disperse crowds. Also, American police use something else in a higher power to disperse crowds.
Yeah.
Water.
Water.
Water cannons are the reason why your kitchen taps are evil. According to David Icke's logic. It's exactly the same
Yes.
logic here.
Yes.
Then he started talking about our reliance on technology. At which point he said 1 in 4 people live in fear of their battery running out. They're terrified of their battery running out, so fear because...
Just to jump in, I think at this point you're starting to talk about point 7, which was
am I?
addiction/dependency.
Sorry, I am. You're right. I've moved into addiction dependency because they want to give us fear. They want to give us anxiety. Those are things you get.
Before you jump onto the battery thing, he was talking about how we encourage addiction and dependency. We started off by giving people holdables,
Yes.
phones and devices, and,
Yeah.
and this is
Yes.
where he was using his points to say
But then he was
that.
going to wearables.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Then
then
we
he was
have
going to
wearables and then
insertables.
implantables.
Implantables.
Insertables. We do already have insertables.
true,
There
we
is
do.
a dildo
Yes.
that emits Wi-Fi that could be hacked.
Yes.
There was a news article about dildo being
we
hacked.
did talk about it on the show at the time.
So implantables, not
Implantables.
insertables. He's probably not on board with insertables as well. But yeah, he said 1 in 4 people live in fear of their battery running out, so they make us anxious about it and fear. But I looked at it; it was a PR survey. It's like you're using one poll data to justify the new world order. This is mental.
He
This is
also
absolutely
mentioned
mental.
like X% of children are on phones at X% of time, and
Yeah.
like
Yes.
all of these standard
Yes.
bad PR articles.
They were all bad PR articles,
Yeah,
all of them.
And yeah, that's probably the biggest evidence he had in the entire show, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was the closest thing he had to evidence. He then said, Samsung, they've already said they're going to make everything interactive, smart technology by 2020.
Yeah.
And that's
Smart
bad.
anything was bad. He had a list of lots of smart things, including things that I don't think exist as smart things. I think he just put smart in front of a
I
load
think
of
you have to
words.
put smart in front of
He just picked some words and put smart in front of
Smart
them.
eggs.
Smarties.
Does.
But yeah, he said it's scary that Samsung are going to make everything interactive by 2020. But because what does Samsung
I
make?
don't know why that's scary.
Like phones, TVs, DVD players.
I mean, no, they do make a lot of stuff.
Do they?
Yeah.
And it's all going to talk to each other.
Make washing machines and stuff as well.
Washing machines.
I had a
Yeah.
big sales pitch in
Fridges.
a Curry's PC World once from someone trying to sell me a Samsung washing machine. And he gave me the whole spiel, and I sat there going, yeah. Oh, does it do this? Yeah, it does. Oh, it's Wi-Fi. Good. Okay. You can control it with an app. Okay, bye then. Poor fucking bloke.
What else did he say? He was going on quite a lot about protecting the kids. He said there's been a massive rise in brain tumours in children.
No, there hasn't.
That was one of the links to his website, not to anything further than that. And he said, and then robots are coming. It's all robots. He said, can you remember? He said, I remember a time when the world was run by humans. Now it's going to be run by robots. But I'm old enough to remember a time that it was run by humans.
Who says
So
it's run by
he's- so-
robots? What's he talking
No,
about?
no.
He-
So
he-
Ike is 66 years old, which
Yes.
he made reference to. And he's saying how the world used to be run by humans. But he's just spent the last 2.5 hours, 3 hours
Saying-
telling us how the world is run by human-alien hybrids.
Yes.
For
And has
6,000
been for
years.
6,000
Unless
years.
he's
Yeah.
6,066 years old.
It's like, mate, just pick a lane and stick in it. Yeah, so that's bad. So then he said, and look at the picture of evolution. He said, well, I might disagree
I'm
with
not
the
sure
monkey
about that
bit.
bit at the beginning.
Okay, well, doesn't believe in the monkey thing because presumably he thinks we evolved from part aliens by this point. But he said Michio Kaku, the famous physicist, said we should fear robots, not aliens. And I said, but I say, what if the robots are being controlled by aliens?
What if?
And I said, yeah, but like, I could say, what if both the robots and the aliens are being controlled by pufferfish? Like, we can all come with asinine comparisons here. It's
Yeah.
not evidence. That's just a what if. It's meaningless.
Fucking pufferfish.
At this point, they told us the goal now is to take our minds, upload them into the cloud, and then download them into completely synthetic bodies to get rid of all humans.
This is point 8, genetic rewire.
Genetic rewire. Get rid of all humans.
Synthetic humans.
And that's really important.
Which they rely on.
Because they need human fear and anxiety and other heavy emotions to feed on. So what they want to do is get rid of all humans and replace them with robots that don't have emotions.
Okay.
Because the plan.
Clearly,
because
the plan says
they think it all through.
Have we reached the 10-minute break yet?
No. This is pre-break.
No one's yet able to get a pint.
We get to point 9 before he goes to the break. He goes through the entire 9-point plan plus his summary of the 9-point plan before we have a break.
So to prove that all of this is being controlled,
we've not even mentioned the trans stuff. He mentioned trans stuff in the middle of it.
It comes in here. It comes in.
Oh, I don't have that. So you have that.
It comes in here because he's saying, so in order to soften us up to get us used to the idea of becoming synthetic humans, there is an agenda in relation to trans people. Now he says he's all right, similar to the racism from before. He's okay with trans people.
Good.
No issues with trans people.
I'm sure he is.
Yeah,
absolutely fine.
Whatever you want to do, so as long as it doesn't harm me, that's absolutely fine. If you want to do that, we should be supportive.
Yeah, there was a whole long spiel. Then a pause.
But it's dangerous to confuse children with gender-bending drugs, and this gender-bending, making girls think they're boys and boys think they're girls, is all part of getting you used to the idea that your body can change and become synthetic and etc.
They are confusing children who weren't previously confused, which are arguments I've heard around the skeptical world too, which is another terrifying thing, that there are arguments in skepticism that directly echo what David Icke is saying, and that should be a red fucking flag.
And another thing that he said is that there's gender-bending chemicals in plastic, and I had been keeping track because he had a plastic water bottle at the side of the stage. He hadn't drunk at this point, and we are nearly 3 hours in.
Yeah.
Is he a lizard?
He might be a lizard.
How hard is it to go 3 hours of speaking without taking a sip of water?
But what if that's it?
It's the perfect cover.
It's a perfect cover. If you go around saying everyone's a lizard, and they go, he thinks people are lizards, this is mental. He's going, I'm a lizard and no one knows. That's perfect.
That's why he's still got a mullet, so no one takes him seriously.
But also there's gender-bending chemicals in till receipts. Why till receipts? Because everyone handles till receipts, but not if we go to a cashless society. Get on there. Get on one lane. Get in one lane.
So trans people are desensitizing society to transhumanism so that we can then
become robots. And no one will care.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Good.
Yep. So that's all fine. But then we get to the control aspect, which is at number 9?
Yeah, number 9, control information.
Control information, okay. To prove that this is all being controlled.
Soros reference.
He's in control of all the media and everything. But to prove that the media is completely controlled by a shadowy hand, that all the media is controlled, he played that Sinclair video of all of the local news organisations that are owned by Sinclair, where they all say exactly the same thing.
Yes.
And he said, and listen to them. And if you were watching your local news, and you saw that, you'd think you were the only area getting that, but they're all getting the same thing. And this proves that the media is being controlled by the spider, because they're all saying exactly the same thing. To which I would say, every time I've been at McDonald's, they've said, have a nice day, which proves that the world is being controlled by the spider, because McDonald's employees are all saying the same thing.
Yes.
That's absolute proof of the Illuminati, that they're all saying the same thing there.
And the Sinclair thing is a genuine issue.
Yeah.
But not an indicator of a shadowy lizard-based conspiracy to run the world and turn us into robots.
It's that the Sinclair group has too much of a hold on American local media and is using that to exert political influence overtly in a way that we can see. He said, and the thing is, even when people are talking about this kind of stuff, you don't realise, you think you're talking to a human being, but there are whole armies, literally armies at some point, people in uniform of people pretending to be real people on social media. Didn't mention where those people were. Conveniently left that bit. We all looked at each other and went, they're in Russia though, aren't they, David? And you've not mentioned that. He said about Orwell once said by 2050 there'll be total control, and Ike said 2050, look how accurate Orwell was with that. It's not 2050 yet. That's a weird thing to say. At this point I've only got a few. Did you have any other kind of notes left?
In that point he went on and talked about the campus craziness thing and deplatforming and anti-fascists.
Students, progressive students are... What did he say?
Anti-fascists are the new fascists.
Anti-fascists are fascists.
Progressive students are fascists. And,
they're doing the same thing that the Nazis were doing.
He even showed like an image of Hitler, a speech given by Hitler to lots and lots and lots of people, and
Right.
he said that we're giving a single man power, we're giving a single organization power, and Hitler only had this power because of all of these people sitting standing in an audience and actually listening to what this man was saying, and then handing power to him.
I think that was I think it was in the second section after the break. But he was saying, like, look at this picture of thousands of people listening to one nutter, and those thousands of people are giving that one nutter power, and we're all going, yes, David, that's bad, isn't it, David, when thousands of people listen to one nutter and give them power. He said, and what those people don't realise, Icke is saying, is if they stopped listening to that nutter, he would have no power. And we're going, yes, David, that's a very real thing, isn't it, David?
The last thing I've got before the break then was I've got Lego Man socks, Allah.
So he said, and the proof that progressive students are ruining everything PC culture gone mad is that there was some socks that had a Lego man on, and he was drilling, and the noise of the drills when you turned the socks upside down looked like Arabic writing, and they got the socks banned, and that's proof that it's PC political correctness gone mad. So no, it was dickheads who did that. It was racists who did that. They said, why are you putting Arabic on kids' socks? You need to stop that. It wasn't progressive people. It was racists saying, oh, this is Islamification of Britain. Britain got PC gone mad. Islam is everywhere. Arabic's everywhere. That's what got those socks banned, not progressive people. A lot of what he said, he kept putting up express stories.
Yes.
So this express story shows aliens doing such and such. And this just backs up the fucking point that I made the other week on this show about the express pumping out conspiracy bullshit for the clicks is actually going to do some harm. He was using it to justify everything he's doing. So an express story about the Matrix is coming. This is academic says the Matrix might well be here. He was using that to prove that his point. This might have been just after the break by this point, I think, because he was saying that, what do we do about all this?
Yeah.
So
the first 3 hours was the problem.
Yes.
The final hour was how do we deal with the
solution.
problem.
Yeah.
The final hour was a shitty self-help video.
It was
the
fucking
secret.
guruism. It was the secret. It absolutely was.
Okay.
But he also points out, going back to, because we know that our existence of our understanding of reality is only electrical signals sent to us, the universe doesn't really exist. The universe doesn't exist when we're not observing it. When we're not looking, the universe, if we're not looking at it, the universe goes away, which I refer to as peekaboo philosophy.
Yes.
That's not how it works. When you put your hands over your eyes, David, the world is still there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like closing the door and the fridge light goes off. That's not what this is. Firewalking, the reason that works is because you phase into another level of reality.
No, you don't.
You hit a different frequency and you phase into a different level of reality.
No.
And fire can't burn something that isn't in the same level of reality as it.
You're not walking on fire, though. You're walking on coals.
Coals, they're not very don't transmit heat for you.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
That's the other reason.
Is it specific
for that.
heat capacity, Laurie? Is that the thing? Specific heat capacity is the thing.
I don't know off the top of my head.
That makes it work.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something like that.
The intellect is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The head, the mind thinks.
Yes.
The heart knows.
No, it doesn't.
But you'll know that because when people need to think about stuff,
Yes.
they say, I'm thinking, and they put the hand to the head. I'm
Yes.
thinking. Whenever you say I'm thinking, you put your hand to your head, automatically you point to your head. Immediately when you say the words I think, you're always pointing to your head.
Yes.
Whereas whenever you say I know, you put your hand on your heart.
No, that's
Every
not
single
true,
time
though.
you do, you put your hand on your heart.
No.
And that's because your heart automatically knows something where the brain
doesn't.
has to go through some stages to get to the point that the heart is already at.
No.
So we know that thinking works like that.
Yeah, he had a great quote for the intellect is bad thing.
All about intellect. A whole quote from a philosopher denigrating the value of the intellect. He said, if you shoot, and this is a very famous philosopher called Albert Camus.
So at this point, he a few slides were him quoting himself.
That was good.
He did quote himself.
I mean, you don't need to quote yourself. You could just say it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or just say it. Just say it once. He didn't say when he quoted himself from either, so I'd like to think it was then. He was saying it originally for the first time ever on the stage that night, but happened to write it up behind him and quote himself.
Talking of quotes, I've got a great one here. So everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics.
I mean, it's
Guess who said that?
Was it David Icke?
No.
Oh, go on. Who said it?
Albert Einstein.
Did he?
Well, I looked into that.
Because he repeated this several times
He
throughout
did.
the talk.
And if you search for that quote on Google,
Yes.
or a more reputable search engine even, you will see repeated time and time again Albert Einstein.
Yes.
But a lot of things have been attributed to Albert Einstein, haven't they?
Yes.
So I looked a little bit deeper.
Okay.
And it turns out it was actually came from a guy called Daryl Anker. Have you heard of him?
No, I've not heard of Daryl Anker.
He's interesting. He's part of a foundation called the Higher Vibration Foundation, and he claims he can communicate through trance channeling with Basha. Have you heard?
No, but I can see where this is going, and I love it.
Okay.
Basha is an extraterrestrial in a parallel reality.
Oh,
yes.
Somewhere else.
Speaking from the future. Okay, so he's channeled.
Whoa! He's an ET.
Yeah,
from a parallel universe
in the future.
In the
future, from our perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so Basha has said this.
How do you spell Basha?
Bashar.
It's not as in Bashar al-Assad.
Bashar. Okay.
I don't know alien. I'm not going to presume.
I was worried it was some sort of Dennis the Menace character.
All right.
But okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's him. So it's. Which sounds exactly like everything that David Icke is saying.
How has it been attributed to Einstein then?
Everything's attributed to Einstein.
So it's not that the person who it's quoted from has tried to attribute it to Einstein themselves. It's been somehow misappropriated.
I thought you might have been channeling Einstein. Because that'd be incredible if he was. That'd be absolutely incredible.
And then, so right towards the very end, he talked about an ancient prophecy he'd just discovered that prophesied him turning up.
Yes, that's true.
In the 90s.
Good in his shell suit on Wogan.
Was that that was the head and the heart thing again? Wasn't it?
The condor and the eagle.
Yeah, so they said like in the there was an ancient prophecy in the 1400s. There'd be a 500-year reign where the head would reign.
It was very specific.
And then in
it was 1490.
In 1490,
exactly 1490.
So 500 years later, he said, the heart will return. And I looked at Emma and said, in the 1990s, the heart will return. I looked at Emma and said, I think it was mistranslation. I think it was the heart will go on. And it was around about 1996-ish, something like that. But yeah, that was prophesizing the return of the Icke there.
On Wogan.
Yeah, so what can we do about all this? He said, well, for one thing, how do we change things? He said, don't protest. No protests have ever changed anything. Look at all the protests they've had. Nothing has changed.
That's definitely never happened.
Don't fight. Look at all the aggression, the violence, the fighting.
Yes.
That's never changed anything. Don't oppose. All the opposition hasn't changed anything. The real way we need the only way we can change something is to realise we have more numbers and we just need to all get together and say, no, we won't do it. We won't submit.
That's opposition, and that's both opposition and protest.
Yeah, that's opposition and protest. Yeah, he's literally describing a protest. Don't do the protest. Do a protest instead. Because he did keep quoting Orwell a lot. And one of the things he kept saying was freedom is the right to say that 2 + 2 = 4. Anything else, after all, everything else, but that's the important thing. Freedom is the right to be able to say 2 + 2 = 4.
Truths.
And he was interpreting that quote as to mean that the inalienable right to speak truths should never be silenced by the oppression of free speech.
Yes.
Which isn't what that quote is really all about in 1984, because it's all about the control of language.
Yes.
And if you can't speak truths, you don't have the language to express truths in your own mind, and therefore you find it much harder to mentally articulate and to grasp hold of truths. That's what that's all about.
Yes.
And it struck me, I realised that when Icke is talking about free speech, he isn't talking about, he thinks he is, but he's wrong when he says he's for the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4, just freedom to speak truths.
Yeah.
He's standing up for the right to say that 2 + 2 = 5.
Yes, he is, yeah.
That's the only right he's ever standing up for. We should be allowed to say anything we want. 2 + 2 = 5. That's the right he's fighting for,
2
and he
+ 2
doesn't realise.
4, that's what happens on the postage stamp.
Yeah, exactly.
2 + 2 is only 4 on the postage
It's written on the back of the postage stamp.
If you are off stamp, then 2 + 2 = 5. And, we know that because of the vibrations of the invisible hidden hand
spider,
with the lizards and the
unseen,
spider and the web and CERN and the sausages.
And the
sausages.
Star of Davis.
Sausages.
We got a great email once about
the sausage story. Yeah.
That I don't think we've talked about on the podcast.
No.
Where a guy told us that he'd introduced it to his daughter, who'd then introduced it to all of her friends. And now all of her friends in Canada or America or
I think
somewhere,
it was
Australia.
Just
an entire school
Just
group
walk around
wandering around going, sausages. Not knowing why.
Which was fabulous.
So I've only got 2 other notes left. One, Icke said he doesn't believe in white privilege, white supremacism. He says there are white supremacists out there, and they're idiots. They're wrong because we're all just infinite consciousnesses having different experiences. Race is just a different flavour of experience.
Car and
yes, you're. Yes, well, I've got. Where are you going with this, Emma?
As in, it's a running theme. He would go, I'm not racist. I'm not transphobic.
Yes, no.
I'm not again, racist, but
so race is just different. It's just people. It's the same consciousness having different experiences through unique bodies. And so you're right, David, but some of those experiences are shittier than others because of race, and that's what we want to try and get rid of. People of a different race will have a shittier experience than people of a different race. But he said there's no white supremacy. But he said the idea of white privilege is nonsense because look at this picture of a homeless person who's white. He doesn't seem to have much privilege, does he?
Okay.
QED, boom. And he's right, because the one thing we know about homelessness is that it affects all races equally in exactly the same numbers, and there is no racial component to who's more likely to end up on the streets. So I only had one of the. I know I'm monopolising, but I still had notes at this point. I think other people had run out of notes on this.
Yeah, the final note I've got written here is David Icke met Jim Carrey.
He did meet Jim Carrey.
Yes.
About the time he went mad.
Yeah, he said, so everyone's saying these days, what happened to Jim Carrey? And I don't know what happened to Jim Carrey, but I had dinner with him a year ago. Like, oh, no. So I went, what happened toIm Carrey? I don't know what happened to Jim Carrey lately.
So Laurie, you've got David Icke's book there.
I have.
And you've got several post-it notes in it. Is there anything interesting in the book that's worth pointing out here?
The moon is not what they say it is.
I know, it's a dragon's egg. Oh, that was Doctor Who. Sorry.
A good analogy for the real moon is the Death Star in the Star Wars movies.
I mean, that's no moon.
Yeah. He mentions homeopathy.
Oh, really?
Good.
Yeah, there's an interesting mention in here. Someone we may know. A mainstream UK newspaper reported something.
What?
Okay.
2,500 vets and animal lovers.
Oh, my God!
Yeah, it's called on a ban for the use of homeopathy in animals.
Did he say anything more, or is that all that said?
I mean, you don't get a name check.
Oh, well, I thought Danny Chambers might get a name check.
Not Danny Chambers either.
Oh, who gets the name check?
No one.
It doesn't even get attributed to the newspaper.
What's concerning to me about that is that's quite early on in the book. That didn't happen all that long ago.
No, has he written
the whole of that?
He's got references to No Man's Sky in here. Yeah, lots of recent stuff.
Good Lord.
So I had a revelation about him.
I think it's quite interesting that he's referencing lots of recent stuff. And I think this probably is going in the same direction that you're just about to go in. But and also comes back to something Laurie said earlier. That he's made this whole talk, and by the sounds of it, his book, if it's got lots of recent stuff in, very relevant to concerns that people have today. And we noticed throughout his talk, the language that he was using was very... He only mentioned lizard men to make a joke about it. He didn't mention the very extreme. It was kind of knocked back. It was, like I said earlier, David Icke light. It wasn't to the most extreme.
He never said fucking.
No,
he kept saying frigging.
Yeah, I barely noticed that, but I listened back to the recording. Yeah.
What's more interesting is he puts it in the book as well.
Frigging.
He writes frigging in the book.
Is it in the index? Frigging, pages 1, 7, 8, 15, 23. No, but one of the other things that struck me, and this might be this felt like a massive revelation when I thought of it, but I may be overblowing it.
Is this your red pill moment?
Yeah, very much so. So he said that a violent perception brings a violent world. So if your perception of the world is violent, you'll bring violence around you.
Okay.
We can't perceive violence. We have to be non-violent. He talked all the time about anything we do has to be non-violent.
Yeah.
And it struck me that Icke is a pacifist. And I genuinely think he seems like a very radical pacifist. He doesn't believe in violence. He wants no violence. But what got me was that he doesn't accept that everyone else is also non-violent. He wants a non-violent world. He's a pacifist who doesn't acknowledge that not everyone else is a pacifist.
Yes.
So therefore, when you see a chemical attack in Syria, that has to be a hoax, because that can't just happen. It can't be that someone decided to do that. That has to be a false flag operation orchestrated by a shadowy hand that is non-human, because otherwise you have to accept, A, humans can be violent for shitty reasons, and B, if you accept that the chemical attack in Syria is a legitimate act by the Syrian government, which it certainly seems to be, and I wouldn't say it was a hoax or anything like that, you have to accept that either you don't intervene and you've had those children die, and more children may die because you've not intervened and there's violence there, or you have to intervene with violence. So the only way to get out of that situation without any violence required, and to be totally okay with that, is if it was a hoax and it never really happened. And it reminds me of an interview I did with a guy called Frank Strasser, who was a 9/11 truther. He ran artists for 9/11 Truth.
Yes.
And he was a pacifist, and he hated 9/11 because he hated the war in Iraq and thought it was an illegal war.
Yeah.
And I said, if you found for certain that 9/11 happened exactly as the government said, would you be still as opposed to the war as a pacifist? And he said, well, no, if that was a genuine terrorist attack, then I could sort of understand some of it, and maybe it was even justified. I said, but you don't want it to be justified because you're a pacifist. So do you think there's any dissonance there?
Yes.
Between that, the easiest way to square that is if it never happened, if it was an inside job,
yes,
then the war definitely was predicated on illegal means, and you can feel totally great being against that war. But if you accept that it was a terrorist attack, you can't feel as good being against that war.
Yeah.
Do you think that's influencing you? And he said, I'd never thought about it that way, but there's something to it. And I wonder whether this is a theme, because when he's talking about, only programmed people can pepper bomb.
Yes.
Which is to say, people can't be violent. A system is the only thing that can make a person violent. Programming and evil and a shadowy hand is the only thing that can make a person bomb someone.
People who lack empathy aren't human.
Yeah.
People who aren't able to emotionally put themselves in the shoes of somebody else.
You can't be violent if you're part of this cosmic consciousness, and because we're all part of the cosmic consciousness, there has to be something keeping you from that consciousness that makes you violent. It's not an innate part of human nature for any element of human nature.
Which is a dangerous attitude to take. That's not, we can't just excuse all human atrocities by saying, well, they weren't really people.
Yeah.
It's
or it didn't really happen.
People who say, well, Hitler was a monster. So no, Hitler was a man. He was a man who did shitty things. And if we pretend that he wasn't actually a man, we're going to let the next man do shitty things. Because we can't just kind of special case all the atrocities out of the human experience, because otherwise it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we've been up to. Who's got a story?
So, overall impressions?
I thought, what I was just saying before, I thought it was really interesting that the language he used, the depth, the fact that he didn't go into the most extreme conspiracy theories into as much detail. It felt very much like a step back from the big major. Like, he mentioned all the big conspiracy theories, but it felt accessible to a general population.
Do you think it was specifically watered down for the broader appeal?
It felt like that.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like that. That he's using specifically. He's avoiding talking about certain things. He's using specific language. He never mentioned lizard men apart from to make a joke about it. He's changed all of his language to how he would have talked about it in the past. The audience was a very broad audience, and he's talking about things that are relevant to concerns that people in today's society have, that he's making it accessible to those people.
Yeah, someone said it's if he's relaunching himself. I don't know if
he's making a comeback.
Well, I don't know if he's relaunching himself or whether society is relaunching him, because it seems to me that there's a lot more conspiracism knocking around society, and the fact that he's A, playing on things that are in popular consciousness anyway, and then B, some of the stuff he did, the free speech warrior stuff we're seeing from the centrists and the campus craziness is the worst thing ever. He was saying exactly that stuff, and whether he's seeing that and parroting it or whether it's coming from a similar place, I think there's something really interesting and quite worrying that people who would consider themselves critical thinkers are almost word for word on board with David Icke there. Now, it could be that it's a stop clock, and he's right and they're right and we're wrong, or anyone who disagrees with him is wrong. Yeah. But it's got to, if what you're saying, if you can read a David Icke quote about that and say every single word of that is true, that's a bit of a worry. Same kind of thing with people talking about trans issues generally. He's bang on with a lot of people, even similar around our movement, are saying, in my opinion, wrongly. That I think is a worrying sign.
Yeah.
That even a critical thinking movement is now overlapping so heavily in some parts with Icke, and I think mainstream society is overlapping even more. The number of times he was pro-Russia, the number of people I've seen on Facebook saying, well, this is just them trying to frame Russia from this, and here's a guy over here who started a petition to say Russia's innocent of everything, and the BBC and Theresa May are propagandists whenever they say anything Russia's done wrong.
I think you're right that conspiracy theories are getting much more acceptable, and people feel like they're more justifiable to use. I see it in cancer issues that people think more and more people think Big Pharma is a big conspiracy, that either cancer doesn't exist or we've already cured it or somebody's suppressing the cure. These things are becoming much more mainstream, and it looks like David Icke is at least taking advantage of that because he's changed his language to make it more mainstream accessible.
He's definitely more mainstream and normal. Anyway, the most obvious expression of the cloud or technological sub-reality is the space fence.
Yes.
That's just dipping into his book at random.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, because I mentioned this at work today as one of my other jobs, and someone said, well, yeah, do you think he really believes it? And I would say, of that lecture, I think he believed every single word he said, and he's being honest there. But I think he believed a fuckload more that he's not being honest about.
Yeah.
He was holding back. I definitely got the impression he was holding back for the sake of both the people in the room and the people who might be encouraged to onto his side. Yeah. As you said, Mike, it's almost like he's trying to advertise his book and get you in, kind of bring you into it gently.
Because if he marches out on stage and goes, "Yeah, it's lizards," half the audience is like, "This guy's a crackpot." Yeah. But before he said like sentence number 2.
Hopefully, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
But yeah, it definitely seems like he's changed his language to fit the mainstream, and the mainstream is moving more in his direction.
So as we intimated earlier, it was the very kind donations from listeners to the show primarily, which allowed us to do things like go and see David Icke and come on the show and talk about the absurd things that he's going around promulgating in theatres in Southport. So if you would
in
like
Liverpool, Mike.
So if you are able and if you are willing to do so to help support Merseyside Skeptics and the stuff that we do, obviously it's not just for David Icke, it helps, go towards the podcast hosting and the stuff that we do with Skeptics at the Pub in Liverpool, the events that we organise.
And other stuff that you may hear about soon.
Okay. You can help donate to Merseyside Skeptics through Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Merseyside Skeptics, you can find out how to donate there. We don't tend to do the kind of perks and rewards things for Patreon.
Sometimes we remember to post the show.
Sometimes we remember to remember the show.
Yeah, sometimes that's sometime being November 2017 and not since. But we will start doing it again properly.
But it's mostly about supporting us and the stuff that we're able to do. Yeah. So we really appreciate it if you guys are able to help out. Aside from that, I think that's probably all we have time for. All that remains then is for me to thank Marsh for coming along today.
Thank you.
And thank you to Alice.
Thank you.
And Emma.
You're welcome.
And to Laurie.
Thank you.
We have been many skeptics with a K. And we will see you next time.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society. For more information, visit our website www.merseysideskeptics.org.uk or email podcast@merseysideskeptics.org.uk.